Hi there, friends. Welcome to another episode of the Franki 411 podcast. This episode, I am very excited to have guest Jonathan Trinity Martin. He's going to go into a little bit of his own personal backstory. He is what you would call a channeler. He channels an extra-dimensional consciousness collective referred to as the Yahyel. If you'd like to find information about his channeling and a little bit more about the Yahyel, you can certainly find him in the links that I have in the description, his YouTube channel where you can see videos about him. But this is a great conversation I had with him about his backstory and a little bit of how he came to be where he is now. So do keep an open mind. If you're here to listen, you probably already have an open mind. So I do thank you so much for joining us, and I hope you enjoy this conversation. So thank you so much for joining me today. We have Jonathan Trinity Martin for the podcast today, who channels the Yahyel civilization. Hello, Jonathan.
Hi, Haley. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you so much for being here. I'm really excited to talk with you. So can you, I know that on a lot of your videos and other podcasts that you've done, you have introduced yourself and what you do in the Yahyel, but for a new audience, could you give a little introduction to you and this channeling that you do, and who are the Yahyel?
Yeah, sure. So, I guess it all started back in like 2007, 2008. At that time, I was going through quite a challenging period of my life. I'd fallen out with a lot of my friends, of my kind of old friends, partly due to my fault, not so much theirs.
Those
And
things happen, right?
yeah, for sure. I can see now how it was all kind of orchestrated, how it had to happen, so I could kind of go
Right.
on this new path. And so I'd been drinking a lot and doing a lot of drugs prior to that time. And I had some health issues and I was suffering from anxiety and depression. And so I was looking for answers and I started like searching through the internet, I started looking into like alternative healing methods. And I got into conspiracies. I was a little bit into like 9/11 conspiracies, which we don't need to go down that horrible rabbit hole
No,
now.
but I think that everybody kind of starts there on this journey. That's kind of a jumping off point for a lot of people, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I was kind of like very open-minded, and I was kind of the mindset at the time, if they wouldn't tell the truth about this, then what else would they lie about? Which kind of opened my mind a lot, and I was
Right.
exploring a lot of things. Like I remember I was doing this. I found this thing called cloud busting, where you like focus your attention on a little white fluffy cloud and visualize it disappearing and make it disappear, and like this would work. And I was like, I'm still not sure if it's a natural phenomena that all small clouds naturally dissipate into into larger clouds. So maybe there was something natural going on. But at the time, I was like, wow. And actually, a few years later, I did actually do an experiment where I actually sat under a sky of it was pure like grey blanket cloud all the way over, and I tried to visualize a blue circle appearing in the sky directly above my head,
Mhm.
and I meditated and I visualized this, and it worked. I couldn't believe it, and
I
like so I
love it.
actually yeah. So I was doing a lot of stuff and kind of finding out, reality was very different to what we thought, exploring a lot of metaphysical things and finding out that, a lot of this stuff is real from like
Yeah.
experiments like that as one thing. And this led me down the path to something that really captured my interest, which was UFOs. I I guess like at the time I was very scientifically oriented, so I found it a little bit hard to believe so much in all the spiritual stuff. But like flying saucers in the sky, I was like, well, sure, maybe maybe. So
Right.
I, I was reading a lot about and looking on the internet a lot about UFOs, and this eventually led me down the path to someone who you may have heard of called Dr. Stephen Greer,
Yes.
who's
Very
yeah,
familiar
yeah,
with him and his work. Yes.
yeah, awesome. And he did this thing called the Disclosure Project. This was like when was this? Like 2007, 2008, and he'd done like this disclosure project where he got all the military witnesses
Yep.
to talk about their UFO experiences. And he also did this thing called CE5, or coherent thought sequencing, which was basically a kind of guided meditation where you connect to your, as he terms it, cosmic consciousness, where we expand our consciousness. And as we go into deep meditation, we start to realize we are actually connected to the whole universe. And from here, you can actually connect your consciousness into ETs, and you start doing like visualizations to show them where you live on Earth, and like invite them in. So you visualize like the Milky Way galaxy, then our solar system, then planet Earth, then the United Kingdom. I'm actually back in my parents' house at the minute, where this all started for me. And I'd visualize like you're zoning in and to the location you live
Yeah,
on Earth.
I've tried to do that, and it's one of those things that kind of, makes me wish I was a little better with geography in terms of like mapping in my head, trying to, okay, I know where I live in South Dakota. I'm trying to, what does Earth look like without, the maps that I have from school in my head to try to zone in a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's probably a little bit more difficult in the United States because you haven't got so much. Because I live kind of near the coast here, and we've got like a very unique
Oh,
coastline. We've got this area known as the Wash, which is between I don't know, two places, but it's like this big like inland kind of harbor, a huge great harbor, like 60 miles or something.
so a unique kind of
Yeah,
land space to visualize.
yeah, and of course the UK has a very unique topography. It's a
Mm-hmm.
very unique kind of country. I think in the ocean. So it's very kind of easy to visualize the UK, I think, and this area of the UK. And then I would visualize Lincoln Cathedral, which is a huge, great Gothic cathedral, like a beautiful cathedral that's just 4 miles
Mm-hmm.
away from here. So we had a
Like
beautiful, like
really great landmark to sort of, this is where I am.
yeah, it's a really great landmark. Actually, in World War II, some of the bomber planes used to use it as a landmark to navigate back to when they were flying back from Germany.
Interesting.
So
So
it's been used.
recognizable, yeah.
Yeah, so it's been used as a landmark for aircraft, and now some very different aircraft. And
There you go.
yeah, and so I was doing this meditation, and then I finally visualized this huge, great tree behind my house, and I was like visualizing that I'm like 4 miles southeast of here, and this is the what's known as CE5, or CE5 coherent thought sequencing. And I started doing this meditation, and it was my first experience with meditation, and I started to really enjoy it. But on the first few occurrences, I started seeing some very profound visions. I saw a vision in my mind's eye of there was one. I still don't know really what I was seeing. I guess it was probably some kind of extraterrestrial world. I didn't really click at the time. That's what I
Mm-hmm.
was seeing. I was just saying, what on earth am I seeing? But what it was I could see the top of a green hill, and it had like a castle on it, like a very traditional, like old English castle. And but there was like these kind of monks on it, all wearing cyan, like turquoise robes, like very much like a traditional like Christian monk, except rather than
Okay.
brown robes, they were like wearing the turquoise cyan robes, and they all had these pillows, and they were all worshipping like this little speck of light on the pillow, and they were all walking around. And actually, what I felt was on these pillows there was actually nothing, and they were worshipping nothing.
Okay.
But the idea is a lot of spiritual teachings talk to the idea that kind of God is no thing, like
Mm-hmm.
the infinite source of creation is beyond all creation, and therefore it is no thing or nothing. And so this is what I felt that they were worshipping, the idea of the ultimate source of reality, which was beyond form and therefore is nothing. So they were carrying these also cyan turquoise cushions, and like I could kind of see this little sparkle of light in the middle. It was nothing, but there was a
Almost
little
like the
sparkle of
divine
light.
spark. It's like it,
Yeah,
it's nothing and everything all in one. And so that's all that's
exactly,
needed. You don't need all
exactly.
the
Yeah.
imagery and the idols and things like that.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess it was a very profound message, actually, thinking about it now, looking back. Now I've got a lot more, understanding of these kind of things. And I saw another vision of this world, which was like it was very different. Rather than this lush green world, it was a very kind of hostile world. It was all just rocks, like
Okay.
just like a rocky terrain with no plants at all. And there was all these crystal structures. They were like 100 feet foot tall quartz crystal points, like going up into the sky, 100 foot tall. And there was like kind of 7 smaller quartz crystal. I assume they were quartz. They looked like quartz crystal,
Okay.
like points around the base of it. And these were, and there was like hundreds of them going to the horizon, all in a dead straight line, just like this. And these were actually houses. They were dwellings. And inside them, there was just like a small cave, a very small area with like these blue beings, blue extraterrestrials, all living as a very tight family, very similar to how you'd see I don't know, like cats living, like cats living
Mm-hmm.
in a small corner with like their 7 little kittens all around them, all huddled
Yeah.
together. It was like this. And so I was seeing these visions, and I was just like, I didn't even kind of realize they were extraterrestrials at the time. I didn't know what I was seeing, but I was like, this is cool. I'm like seeing things
Kind
in
of
my
watching a
mind.
movie in my head. That's interesting.
Yeah. It was kind of like that. I was totally new to it all. I didn't know what was going on, but it was really cool. And also the meditations were making me feel very peaceful and very happy.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, I've been through this difficult phase in my life, and all of a sudden I found something that made me feel really great. So I just carried on doing it just because I was enjoying doing it. And I kind of forgot that I was actually trying to invite in like extraterrestrials physically in like ships into my location. I kind of forgot that. And I was just doing it every day because I was enjoying it. It just became a habit. And I did it every day for 6 to 7 weeks, something like this. I don't remember the exact dates. But after that, I had stuff started to happen. I guess it does if you do like ET contact meditations every night continuously. I think stuff's going to start to happen after a while, and it
Yeah.
did. And I had I
Eventually
had,
you're
I,
going to get results. That's good, but that's a good thing to know, right?
yeah, for sure. And this is one thing I encourage, when I teach, like if you're really into this, just keep doing it every day until you get
Mm-hmm.
results. And like it worked for me. And so yeah, and I had a series of 3 UFO sightings over the next few weeks over this house here in Lincolnshire, where I'm
What?
now back in the
So now
UK.
I know you've talked about. Can you describe what did the were they just lights, or were you able to see actual shapes of the craft itself, or
No, they were just lights, but they did some very unusual things. If I
the
ha
maneuvering that human crafts can't do?
Yeah, basically. So I'll describe the second sighting I had. The first sighting was just basically this very strange flashing, like right over my house. But there was always like military jets involved in these sightings, and this is a theme that's
Okay.
continued into a recent contact experience that we can talk about later. But the first sighting, it was like I heard that I was laid on my bed doing the CE5 meditation. It puts me in touch with the energy. I need to calm down and just get
Oh,
too carried away.
sorry.
And
Yeah,
so,
that's kind. It's still exciting though, right? It's
yeah, for
getting
sure.
that energy connection is really great.
Yeah, I guess fast and exciting works, especially if this is going on TikTok. We need to talk 100 miles an hour if we're on TikTok these days. It's
Oh no,
ridiculous.
no, that's why you do the little clips. You just put pieces,
Yeah,
and then they can find the full episode.
yeah. So I was lying on my bed and doing the C5 meditation, and I felt an energy of unconditional love come over me. Probably the first time I'd ever experienced unconditional love. Just a pure feeling of love for no
Mm-hmm.
reason. Before that, I'd always associated love with, partners, relationships. I'd never
Sure.
experienced just love for in a meditation for any, just for no reason. And so I was doing the meditation. I felt this feeling of unconditional love, this really like beautiful feeling coming over me. And I remember looking up at my lampshade above my bed, and it started rotating like this, and I could see like it was almost like there was little windows round my lampshade.
Oh,
And
that's
then now
very
I kind of
interesting.
yeah, I now believe what was occurring is I was kind of seeing with my third eye, and like so I was kind of overlaying, kind of looking, seeing 2 dimensions. On
Right.
physical reality, there's the lampshades, but now I'm tapping in perhaps to the astral level, astral dimension, another dimension of reality, and kind of overlaying it on that. and it started to rotate. And then the next thing I know, I hear this very loud noise of a fighter jet approaching my house, a military jet. And so after watching a lot of UFO documentaries, videos
Maybe
and
just a
stuff,
little bit spooky in the moment, huh?
it wasn't spooky at the time. No, it was exciting at the time. It's never really spooked me. I think because I was at home in my bedroom. I've had
Sure.
these experiences when you're out in the forest in the middle of the night and this starts happening. It's very different. It's not,
Yeah, it's a
that's when
different
you
kind of
get
energy.
spooked. But
Sure.
yeah, but when it was the middle of the day. It was still light. I think it was approaching dusk, but it was like early evening. I think it was probably like August time, and it was probably like 8 p.m. It was just starting to get dark. I just heard this sound of this military jet approaching, and I knew from all my research that often, like, helicopters, military jets are involved in UFO sightings. So I jumped up, I looked out the window, and it was back at the other side of the house when I was living here, because I'm just kind of temporarily staying in a different
Hmm.
room now. And I like looked out the window, and from this I couldn't see this fighter jet, but I could tell it was flying over the top of the house, and there's clouds cover, that's why I couldn't see it. But from the location of where the fighter jet was flying over, I saw three big bright flashes of white light, like pulsing, like whoosh,
Hmm.
whoosh, whoosh, like that. And the energy was like electric, like that's all I saw. And like, I don't know, it could have been some strange military jet phenomena, but there was this incredible energy, and with everything that was going on. So I felt something had happened then. It really felt like, looking back, I'm sure there was some kind of extraterrestrial presence there.
So some of
And
it is a little bit of intuition too, right? Just the,
yeah,
the feeling and the
exactly.
sense that you get that there's something more than what our logical minds like to try to come up with a rational explanation, right?
Yeah. And so the next sighting, so who knows what happened there, but the next sighting was a lot more interesting, a lot more bizarre. So I think this time I was actually watching a UFO documentary on the internet. So it wasn't actually when I was doing the CE5 meditation this time. But again, I heard the sounds of military jets approaching the house. And obviously, after last time, I was like, "Oh, maybe something happening." So I
Oh,
jumped up to my window, and like, from the sound of where it was coming from like west to east over there. I craned my head out the window to look over the house of the roof, over the roof of the house where it's coming from. And from where the sound of the military jet was coming from, I could see no military jet. All I could see was a golden ball of light, a ball of like almost like gold fire, like gold light, like just going over the house. But it appeared to be making the sound of a military jet. And
oh,
so,
interesting.
yeah, I still don't know really what was going on to this day. It was very bizarre. I've got some theories we can perhaps talk about in a minute, um, but yeah, it was going over, and I said to it in I can't remember if I said it verbally. I think I just thought it in my head. I just kind of said the thoughts in my head. I said to it, yeah, I don't think I said it out loud. I just kind of spoke to it in my head in thoughts. I don't know how I knew to do that, but like,
Yeah.
I just said it in my. I probably read stuff about this, but said to it just in my mind. I said, if you're a UFO, go up and down. And as soon as I said that, so it's going along like this, making the sound of a military jet, a golden ball of light. And as soon as I said that, it went poof, and shot up in the sky about like 200 feet, 100 feet, 200 feet, something like this. And then it went along, and it came down again. I don't remember exactly, but I think it went up again,
Hmm.
totally like impossible maneuvers,
Like a complete perpendicular, just straight up.
yeah, like if it was some kind of military project, it was some kind of super top secret military jet that
Right.
we still don't know about today, because officially there's nothing in like the military arsenal that can go and turn on a 90-degree angle and just go
Right.
like that. Like, that's way beyond like any military aircraft can do officially. And so it went along and it came back down. I think it went back up again. Then at some point it disappeared, just disappeared at all. I presume it was still making the sound of the military jet. I think it must have been, and then it reappeared, but it was invisible, like this way. It just disappeared, and then it reappeared, and then it went off into the distance, over to the east, over there. And I remember right in the distance, it started to flash like red and green lights on the wings, almost like a normal aircraft, like normal. I think they call them the navigation lights, the red
Sure.
and the green lights. And yeah, and so I thought about this a lot, and like, perhaps it was. I think one thing that ETs do is they don't like to infringe on our free will, and they don't like to freak us out, and they don't like to force their beliefs on us, and they like to give us like a kind of get out clause,
Well, that's
like
kind of what I was thinking, that maybe that was the sound of the military jet, if they maybe mimic that sound as a sort of, hey, last time we made that sound, you came out and looked out the window. Maybe this is a trigger to get you to look out the window. But then, like you say, it's
yeah,
also okay if you're not prepared to accept the idea of it being an extraterrestrial, then here's a familiar sound that you can explain it away if it's too much for you.
yeah, exactly, because it might have been like too much for me, or I think there's this kind of thing where they like to respect the free will of like an evolving civilization. It's like they like to let us evolve at our own rate, and they don't like to force themselves upon us. So it could have been that, like giving my mind an option to believe that you tell myself that it was just something normal and forget about it. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
One other theory that is very interesting is there's a story that when from the days of the great explorers like Christopher Columbus
Mm-hmm.
and these guys, the great sailors. There was one called Magellan, I think was the
Magellan.
name. Magellan,
Yeah.
Magellan, yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, that they would tell these stories. I think it was particularly Magellan. When he would land off the coast in his giant, sailing ship, these amazing, sailing ships that they had with all the sails
Mm-hmm.
in those days, they would they would anchor up offshore, and the locals, the natives, wouldn't be able to see them. It was like the natives wouldn't pay any attention. They'd anchor up in this huge, great, magnificent sailing ship, these olden
Right.
ships, just off the coast, and ready to invade the natives, or or whatever. And you think really the natives would be preparing their spears, freaking out,
Right.
and but they wouldn't even see them. They wouldn't even notice them. They'd just carry on with their work, and they'd be like, "This is weird. It's almost like they can't see us." But as soon as they got in their smaller boats, in their rowing boats, to come into land, all of a sudden the natives would see them, and start taking action. And it's this, the theory is that you can't see something if you don't believe it exists, like the physical.
Right. Yeah. So kind of like, we create our own reality and you vibrate with the reality that is with your belief structure, kind of how Bashar, or Daryl Anka talks about, with Bashar, that if you believe in something, you're able to vibrate with it and interact with it. But if you don't, it's something that, because everything exists in the here and now, it is here, it is there. But if you don't have a belief structure that says that that is a real thing, or that that exists, it is kind of invisible to you. It's like a perception filter.
Yeah, exactly. And this is a phenomenon known in psychology, and to use like a more real world example, I know Tony Robbins, the business life coach, gives an example of this. He uses it for a very different reason. He's
Mm-hmm.
all about creating wealth and that. But he gives the example of like, well, when you're a child and you're having dinner at the dinner table, and your mom asks you to go and get the salt out the cupboard, I'm not getting the salt. I can't be bothered. I'm at my
Mm-hmm.
dinner. I don't want to get it. I don't know where the salt is. Shut up. And like, I just want to eat my dinner. And your mum's like, go and get the salt now. So you go to the cupboard and you open the cupboard, and he said, I can't see the salt. And she says, it's there on that shelf. He said, I can't see it. It's not here. And you're really looking for it, but you don't want to see it. So somehow you just can't see it.
Right.
And she's like, get me the salt now. You're like, I can't see it. It's not here. And then she comes over and she's like, what's this? And you're like,
Yeah.
oh. And it's like it's that psychological phenomena. You really don't want to see it. You don't believe it's there, and so you can't see it. And it's kind of something psychology.
Well, or
Um,
so another example that I kind of like with that is when you're, sort of panicked looking for something, say like your cell phone, I can't find it, I can't find it, and you're digging through everything and trying to find it, and turns out it's been in your hand the whole time. You've had it the
yeah,
whole time. One of those things like where like you just because you're in this belief structure of I don't have it, you don't realize it's right there.
yeah. And so that was one of the theories I had that because like it was when it went into the distant, when it was like going up and down, when I said to it in my head, like if you're a UFO go up and down, it went. I mean, at that moment, I was like, "Holy crap, this is a UFO!" But then it
Mm-hmm.
went off into, it slowly went off into the distance over the period. It's like probably a minute or even 2 minutes. Before I could still see it in the horizon, and then and then yeah, and then it kind of turned into these it appeared to I could see these red and green. It suddenly seemed to change into a normal plane with the red and green nav lights flashing on it. So I wondered if it was something to do with my mind. At that point, I started to doubt it, and as soon as I started to doubt it, my mind put this filter over it, and I saw what I believed it to be.
Mm-hmm.
Incidentally, I just remembered that like after that sighting, I looked over to my neighbor who no longer lives here. They moved away, and I never asked her about this. I never dare. I would do. I wish I had done. But I looked over to my neighbor's window, and she was stood there,
So you
literally.
weren't the only one who noticed
Yeah,
it.
yeah. So she saw it as well because her kitchen window, directly overlooks that way, the direction it
Sure.
was coming. And I
Well, and
remember
isn't
looking
that
out.
that's some great confirmation though that like, well, she must see something strange if she's got that look on her face of
Yeah,
shock.
yeah. Maybe
So
that. I know. Go
so
ahead.
the Yahyel, what when did you first sort of have a more, I guess, conscious sort of dialogue situation happen?
Yes. So a few months after this, I came across the teachings of Bashar, channeled by Darrell Anker.
Mm-hmm.
He's another extraterrestrial channeled by someone called Darrell Anker, and he is like a hybrid grey extraterrestrial, and he's half human, half grey extraterrestrial, and kind of looks like one of these greys with the big eyes and the big
Mm-hmm.
heads. And it's interesting because in the CE5 meditation, I was actually before I do the zoning in, the way I was connecting into the ETs was to visualize the face of a grey ET because that was the only type of extraterrestrial I knew of at the time. I was
Sure.
kind of making my own meditation because Dr. Greer, I couldn't find his whole method at the time. I don't know if he was sharing it publicly back in 2008 fully. So I was visualizing this image of a grey extraterrestrial as part of the CE5 meditation. And of course, now I understand that we actually create our reality kind of due to the law of attraction through what we focus upon. So I actually believe as a kind of side effect of these CE5 meditations, I actually manifested Bashar and shifted to a parallel reality, a timeline where there was this grey extraterrestrial channeled by Darrell Anker. And
Oh, that's an interesting thought that you sort of like you shift into a new reality, and that's why you also sort of find these different channelers or this different information that you shift into a reality where you can access that information.
yeah, but because this is one of the teachings that the Yahyel that I channel teach, and also what very similar to what Bashar channeled by Darrell Anker teach, the idea that we create our own reality, and reality is actually an illusion within our
Mm-hmm.
consciousness. It's actually there's not actually really an earth out there. We're not actually really a being living in earth. Earth actually exists within us, much like a dream at night. When we have a dream at night, we know it's not we're not really going anywhere. It's just something that's happening within our consciousness when we're asleep. And so this is the same as physical reality, from what I understand it, from what I've learned from the ET channelings.
Yeah, absolutely. Everything is consciousness. And so you're experiencing a sort of and even quantum physics now is agreeing with this, I don't, you wouldn't call it a theory, but with the concept that all of reality is more of a holographic light projection. Like you are the projector, you project the light. And so everything sort of appears around you, not that you are moving about in reality, but reality creates itself around you.
Yes, and ultimately within our consciousness, because we are, I guess, ultimately source consciousness, and
Mm-hmm.
everything exists within us. And so, and this has been taught by most of the major religions, most spiritual teachings, as well as quantum physics.
Mm-hmm.
Many of the Eastern spiritual teachings, teach that reality is an illusion. I can't remember the exact words they use for it now. Kind of the veil of illusion, the veil of, I can't remember what to call it, but
Yeah. But it is at the basis of a lot of religions. The idea, the kingdom of heaven is within you, even in Christianity,
yeah.
is something they say. And it's something that, we have sort of not necessarily understood properly, maybe as a human consciousness for a very long time, but we're kind of waking up to understanding that no, it really is within you. It's reality. It's is within you. The divine light of creation comes from you. It's not that you're, sort of a pawn moving around in it and subject to whatever is going on, but that you have a lot more say in your reality than what we've been sort of taught or conditioned to believe up till, recently. Well, I should say, for most people, maybe in the mainstream, I guess you could say.
Yeah, exactly. And from what I understand, the way we create this is there's actually kind of infinite parallel realities. Like
Mm-hmm.
reality is infinite in nature, and we're always kind of navigating through different parallel realities. Actually, like billions of times a second, we're moving through you could almost view reality as infinite still frames. Like this is one parallel
Mm-hmm.
reality, this is one parallel reality, this is one parallel reality. And normally, we're just waving our hand, and there's nothing abnormal about seeing our hand waving. But that's actually, we've shifted through like billions and billions of parallel realities to
Right.
give that illusion of our hand waving.
Like think of like a film strip. It's all individual
Yeah,
pictures,
exactly.
but when it moves quickly, it gives you the illusion of motion.
Yes, exactly. And so once we begin to understand this more, and we understand that we actually create our reality through what we focus upon, through our beliefs, where we focus our attention, we can this is what actually occurred during the CE5 meditation. It wasn't so much that I actually telepathically communicated with an ET in Sirius and invited him into our reality, although that was probably was true in the illusion, in the experience.
Right.
On a deeper level, I created this reality within my dream consciousness where I invited a being from Sirius into my reality, or perhaps from the Yahyel mothership or whatever, or these grey beings. And so like I was saying, I believe that like I created this reality within my consciousness. I shifted to a parallel reality, or I made a timeline shift, as it's fashionably called these
Yeah.
days.
The trendy way to say it. Yep. Timeline shifting.
Yeah, I shifted timelines to a timeline where there was this guy called Daryl Anker who was channeling a grey extraterrestrial who looked very similar to the grey ETs that I was visualizing in my CE5 meditation. So yeah, so to get back to the story where I was on, I ended up listening to Daryl Anker's teachings every day for like about a year. Like I said, I was going through quite a difficult time in my life. I was looking for answers, and he was teaching, if you follow your highest excitements, moment to
Yep.
moment, your life will get better, you'll get happier, you'll get more joyful, you'll get healthier. And so these were kind of all the things I was looking for at the time: happiness, health, and it's what we're
Yeah.
all looking for ultimately, isn't
Isn't
it?
it? Yeah, that's all we're trying to do, every one of us. Just how do I
Yeah,
be happy?
yeah. And so, and also I'd come across channeling a bit before in my research, but I was like, this is crazy, someone going how, and I was like,
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
this is too much. But then I
It's
came back to it this time with Bashar, and I don't know, so I guess I've become a bit more open-minded by now. I actually came across it through some synchronicities, through getting some guidance in a meditation. And the information seems it seems like a higher level of intelligence. It didn't seem just like random nonsense. If someone was crazy, you wouldn't expect them to be like
Right.
very coherent and
But there's also, I think, probably an element too of things resonating with you as being true, and that's, I think, something that, with people who are talking to people like you who channel on podcasts and things, trying to help others be open-minded in the sense of, maybe don't overthink this and automatically judge it as being, someone who's a charlatan, somebody who's fake. Listen to the message, listen to the information, feel the energy. Does it resonate energetically with you as being true? Does it make you feel something? And that's really what you should focus more on, is how do you feel when you hear this message or receive the information or experience that channel? Or do you feel a sense of truth? Is there a spark in you that that feels like this could be real, or that this is something that connects with you?
yeah, very much so. I mean, I now understand that to be true. I didn't understand anything about that at the time, but I'm sure that played a part in it. Some deeper level of me.
Mm-hmm.
My soul consciousness, my higher self, I guess, was starting to shine through,
Kind
and
of
like,
tap on the window and hey, pay
yeah,
attention to this kind of thing.
yeah. I think all along I've been kind of open to alternate ideas. When a lot of people have just been, oh, this is nonsense. I've kind of been like, well, maybe it's not nonsense. This seems quite intelligent. Right, going back
Mm-hmm.
to even younger years where I started doing yoga, and it must have been going back to, I don't know, 2002, something like this. My friend had a book on yoga, and everyone was like, in those days, everyone was like, oh, yoga's nonsense. Yoga's like
Right.
woo stuff.
Yeah.
Of course, now, like, how can you like,
Right. Everybody's doing yoga.
yeah,
Yeah.
like yoga's a regular thing, but like back in 2002, even like, because it was coming from Hinduism, we weren't really exposed to the internet, we weren't exposed to alternate things. So I remember like back in 2002, people were like, oh, yoga's or woo woo, and I was
Mm-hmm.
like, well, maybe it's not. It seems to make a lot of sense. So I'll give it a go. And like, same thing when internet poker first came on the internet. Everyone was saying it's all a luck game. You can't make a living at internet poker because it's just luck. But there were all these books saying, well, actually you can use a strategy
Yeah, you
to
can
beat
kind
the
of
odds.
trick the algorithm kind of thing.
Yeah, well, it's actually not tricking the algorithm. It's actually like out because you're playing against other people. You've just got to play better than the other people over
Well, you're right,
like
which is the same as if you're in a physical poker tournament or what have you, learning how to read the situation and make the right decisions, which I guess is kind of like, even in itself, even in poker, you're still kind of tapping into your higher self. The good poker players, they're the ones who are tapping into an intuition that tells them when to bet and when to bluff, and sort of how to behave
yeah.
to navigate and to win.
Yeah, exactly. And the idea is that like if you play it while you can get unlucky several times and they can get lucky cards, if you play like 100,000 hands, the randomness will balance out if you're
Right.
playing a better game over time. And but yeah, and I was kind of like this. Everyone was like on the internet, yeah, you can't make money at poker, and I was like, well, all the top strategists say you can. So why would I believe some random idiot who's just saying blah blah blah? And
Right.
so I've kind of always just been open to like new things, like and I tend to always be right as well. I don't want to like choke my own show and I go check my ego here. But like with yoga I was right, with poker I was right. With some of these conspiracies, I believe everything I kind of focused upon it's turned out to be true. And like I'm
Right.
now
And
saying to people,
it's part of creating your reality though, right? Like, you shift into the timeline where it is true and you are correct because you do believe it. So, you shift
yeah,
into the timeline where of course people make a bunch of money playing poker online. Of course yoga is the thing that everybody does now,
yeah, looking at it that way, yeah,
yeah, like
it's
I've shifted into that timeline where that's what the reality is because that's what I believe. So,
yeah. Yeah. Anyway, let's not get too sidetracked on poker. So,
yeah.
so, so, so yeah. So I was following these teachings of Bashar for a year, and in 2009 on my birthday. My
Happy
birthday,
birthday, right?
yeah. Thank you. My birthday weekend. It's my 33rd birthday, and 33 threes is all connected to
Yeah,
this.
yeah,
I can
yeah.
talk a lot about this. It was my 33rd birthday weekend. All my friends told me they weren't interested. The few friends I had left, because I'd fallen out with a lot of them, if you
Mm-hmm.
remember. And the few had left didn't want, were all busy, strangely, didn't want to do anything with me. I wanted to go fishing, like angling. And they're like, no, we're all busy. And, oh, great. So I decided to go fishing to the coast. But actually, at the last minute, I actually my friend, I managed to get a little bit of marijuana for my birthday. I hadn't
Oh,
touched it for like this whole. I used to smoke it a lot, but then I hadn't touched it for over a year. I thought it's my birthday. I just have a little bit, and when I smoked this little bit of marijuana, it did, after studying Bashar's teachings every day for a year, it kind of like something clicked. It's like, so I just
you
knew it
know,
was
if
all
you could
true.
just get into that relaxed state, maybe just a little something that like you just allowed a little extra in, right? Like, a
Yeah,
little bit of
yeah.
assistance, that kind of permission slip, like Bashar says, to like relax yourself enough to let in something new.
Yeah, exactly. It just like up until that point, I'd been kind of scared. My mind had been like, "Is this true? Is this real? I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
This seems very different to." But something just like you say, relaxed, and all of a sudden, I like just knew it was all true. And I like, right, what's my highest excitement? And I'm like, being as I'd started smoking the weed again for my birthday weekend, I decided I was going to go to Amsterdam on the ferry across
Okay.
the ocean, because Amsterdam is where cannabis is legal or decriminalized. Because in the UK,
Right.
it's still legal here now, actually. And but in Amsterdam, it's been decriminalized so many years. So I could go to Amsterdam and smoke much better quality weed in the coffee shops where it's
Yeah.
all legal and you don't have to worry about police or whatnot. And so it became my highest excitement. I only had like about 200, just over 200 British pounds to my name, but I was like, come on, Bashar says follow your highest excitement, trust
And
it'll
you'll be
support you.
fine.
Yeah, so I ended up driving to the ferry port, and I managed to get a quite a cheap ticket on the ferry, very synchronistically
Yeah.
to Amsterdam for the weekend. I got like this booze cruise thing where you go for the weekend on the overnight thing, and got a cheap ticket. And yeah, and spent the weekend in Amsterdam, just like following my excitement. I had
Mm-hmm.
a really amazing weekend. I was smoking the high quality stuff in Amsterdam, and just following my excitement, just going
Yeah.
around all the shops and the stores and visiting the museums and the daffodils and the tulips, which Holland's famous for, and all this stuff. And I had an amazing weekend. And then I remember on the coach back, I remember I remember the last thing I did was I threw the last of my weed in the bin, because obviously you can't bring it on the ferry
Yeah.
back to the UK. You get
Right.
big trouble. So I threw it all away and got on the coach. And I remember that on the coach back, I could hear all this like music. It was like angels were singing to me, like it was so beautiful. It was like I could just hear like all these angels singing to me. It might have been the ETs, I don't know, or singing to me the most beautiful music I've ever heard. Still, really to this day, I've never really had this experience again.
Was
And
this something that you was more sort of in your mind kind of experience that like sort of like what they, when they say head radio, like if a song plays in your head, like you're hearing this in your mind sort
no,
of, or
no,
you were hearing it
it was.
auditorially like it was outside?
Oh no, no, it was inside my head, like
Mm-hmm.
like when the song's playing, but it was something I'd never heard before. And just actually to touch on it, I had this incredible like synchronicity, like coincidences, but as I know synchronicity now, where
Mm-hmm.
like when I was driving to the ferry port, I drove here from Lincoln to Hull, and just as I approached every traffic light, they all turned green just as I was approaching.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're a driver, that never happens.
Right, absolutely.
It's normally the other way around, isn't it? It's normally they're
Yeah.
all red when you get to them. But it wasn't just they were all green as I approached them. It was every single one of them, right? I'd be driving towards them, and they'd be red, and just as I approached it, it'd go red, amber, green. and I'd go through.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to the
Just
next
a
traffic
perfect
light.
flow
Yeah,
timing.
yeah, perfect. And it's exactly the same every time. It'd go red, amber, green, and I'd go through. Like
Mm-hmm.
all the way, like from here, like it's like a 55-mile journey to the ferry port from here.
Oh, so
And
quite a long time.
yeah, yeah. And I must have gone through a dozen or more, maybe 50, I don't know, over a dozen traffic
Yeah,
lights.
that's I think so. Like a lot of people would consider that to be, a very high stroke of luck, but definitely,
Yeah.
amazing
I mean,
synchronicity.
I remember as I was approaching not Holland, Hull, where the ferry port is. Like by this time, like my jaw was dropped. I was like, "Whoa!" Because I was seeing it happen, and I knew this was like beyond normal. Like this was
Right.
like really bizarre. And I remember driving over what's known as the Humber Bridge, which is it's a huge, like, beautiful suspension bridge over a massive estuary, a river estuary into the sea,
Mm-hmm.
where it begins to branch out into the ocean. And as I drove over that, like it was dead calm. There wasn't a single ripple on the water, and there was all this steam rising off the water, and it was like I was heading into some mystical realm. It was like I'd stepped
And you're on
outside.
a bridge too, so very sort of symbolic, crossing over into a
I
new
guess, yeah, yeah,
reality kind of thing, thinking of bridges as being sort of like liminal transitional, right? It's a transition
yeah,
over
yeah,
something.
exactly. And it was like literally mystical, mystical. I guess this is what part of where the word mystical comes from. This real like spiritual mist. It's
Mm-hmm.
different. This spiritual mist. They used to talk about in the Mists of Avalon. There's a famous book
Yeah.
about Glastonbury here, which used to be Avalon, where King Arthur and Merlin and all them lived, and
Mm-hmm.
the mists would part to get into Avalon. I'm sure it was that same mist. It's not human plain mist. It's mists of another dimension. And so this mist was rising, and by now I'm like, whoa.
This
Like the
feels
traffic lights all
weird.
changing, yeah. And I knew something was happening at that point. Like it was very clear that it was like I was, I know, crossing the threshold of like normal reality. It was
Yeah,
like,
into a higher timeline.
I think looking back, the ETs might have been present at that point. Because I've had experiences since where mist appears when the ETs are about. Very
Mm-hmm.
much like the movies. You've seen the movies
Well, and that's kind of what I thought, like part of our reality is a little bit informed by pop culture and the things that we've seen. And so, you have that sort of imagery in your mind when it comes to those kind of moments in movies. And so it's like, okay, well, so this is what I create for my reality, and this, what my higher self is telling me is sort of a pivotal moment that I need to recall. So I have this additional imagery that goes with it. This in the same, in the same way movies are created, I'm creating this movie for myself, and so like this is how I've created it, like this amazing experience of all these synchronistic green lights, and then this amazing you know bridge scene. Like you can visualize it as a movie. Like just seeing the it's like a big moment. You can almost hear the music swelling, the soundtrack kind of thing.
yeah, and I'm sure that's part of it, because it's all affecting our reality. But I do believe also that Steven Spielberg, who perhaps one of the most famous of Close Encounters of the Third Kind, it said that he had insider knowledge, and
Yeah, that he spoke with, oh, I can't remember the gentleman's name, starts with an F, who was in Project Blue Book, that did assist him with information, sort of, to create that film.
yeah, J. Allen Hynek,
Yeah.
and he actually appears. I found out the other day that J. Allen
Mm-hmm.
Hynek actually appears in the movie. He actually
Yeah,
got a
at the end
cameo
scene,
role.
he's in there. Yep.
Yeah, yeah, he actually appears in the movie, and like, yeah, he was one. Like for those of your viewers that don't know, he was like he worked on one of the main government projects of UFO research, and he ended up quitting because he was like, this is just all a sham. It's a cover up. They don't want to get back to the truth, so I'm leaving, and I'm going to get to the
Mm-hmm.
bottom of this myself. And I believe he was the guy that invented the terminology close encounters of the first kind, second kind, third kind,
Right.
and fourth
Yes.
kind.
Yes.
Yeah. And I've recently actually seen an interview with Steven Spielberg. It popped up in my TikTok feeds, and Steven Spielberg has actually now got on the record and said that extraterrestrials are visiting us and the government knows this and they're not telling us the truth.
Oh, I have not seen this. Oh, that's so wow. That's an interesting sort of shift into a timeline of disclosure on a higher level, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Very cool.
I'm paraphrasing, but he basically said something like that. He says, we're being visited by extraterrestrials. The government knows a lot more than they're telling, and they're not sharing it with us. He's officially
Well,
said.
obviously, because you speak to them directly, so you know this.
So sorry, I'm not quite with you.
Oh, sorry. You speak to them directly, so you know that they're visiting us because they speak with you and they've talked to you. The Yahyel.
Yeah, well, I know. Yeah, and I've actually had a physical experience with them now. I've been on the ship, which I'll get to in a minute because it kind
Sure.
of fits into the story. So yeah, basically, I had this amazing mystical weekend in Amsterdam. I came back to the UK on Monday morning on the ferry. Returned on the booze cruise ferry in the morning. I didn't have any booze, so I wasn't into that at the time. Yeah, I had another synchronicity on the way back actually because I'd run out of money. I had literally like about £5 British. I still had £7 British left, and I saved myself like enough money to buy like two sausage rolls
Hmm.
on the ferry for my breakfast, and with the other £4, I went in the casino and put it on the roulette table, and won enough money to eat in the restaurant.
That's amazing. I love that. I
Yeah, yeah,
do love that. We follow your excitement and your reality will support you. And
yeah, yeah.
it's definitely that's something that I think for me at least is, it's a little bit of a challenge still for me to allow that, and not have that human worry and concern. But I love that. You just go ahead, last $4, here you go, and you won enough to have a bigger dinner. That's amazing.
Yeah, and so I got in the posh restaurant, which is the buffet restaurant that night, and I got in there like 30 minutes before closing or something, and it all seemed so synchronous because it was like I had like literally 30, it was maybe less than 30 minutes, but it was like 20, 30 minutes to like eat as much as I could. Obviously, I've been smoking all weekend, so I had the
Oh
munchies
yeah,
galore.
for sure.
And like they were saying like, right, you've got 20 minutes. If you eat too much, it's not going to help because something big is going to happen tomorrow, which I'll explain in a minute. They obviously knew this.
Okay.
Um, but it was like I had enough time to fill my belly with just enough calories to get me through the next day. I ate like quite a lot, but I had to all be eaten in like 25 minutes or something. And I ended up eating like I was kind of like semi-vegan at the time, semi-vegetarian. I was only eating fish. So I meant to get like 3 pieces of fish, but I got chicken by mistake. So I got 3 pieces of chicken. But maybe I needed it
The extra
the next
protein.
day, yeah, because the next day I had quite an amazing experience. So it was kind of like they wanted to get me plenty of sustenance so I had the calories to get me through the day because basically I arrived back in the UK the next day. I went out to I thought, right, I'm gonna follow my excitement one last time. And instead of going to work, I was planning on going to work that morning, on the Monday morning. And I'm gonna follow my excitement one last time, skip work. I was self-employed, so it wasn't too hard, and just go to the forest. I just got this real excitement to go to the forest in the UK. And like when I got there, I found I had this little bit of weed left in my car that I got for my birthday from my friend.
Oh, okay.
Um, and so I thought, oh,
I'll
and
relax again.
yeah,
It's been working so far.
yeah, yeah. And so I smoked it in the forest, but it was like I smoked too much. It was like because I hadn't smoked it for a year, I kind of smoked the same amount that I was smoking before when I was smoking it all the time. And it's kind of like I overdose. Of
Okay.
course, you can't seriously overdose on weed, but you
Right,
can.
but your
I mean,
tolerance is not the same, so
yeah, yeah.
have a heavier experience.
And I basically felt like I was going crazy. Like I had a real horrible experience after smoking this. I felt like I was infinite consciousness trapped in my body. And it was a really, really unpleasant feeling. Like
Hmm.
something new in me. I was a soul, I was a spiritual being, and my natural state was like infinite and untethered and unbounded. But then I realized I was in my physical body and I wasn't infinite and I wasn't unbounded and I felt trapped in my physical body and
Right.
it freaked me out big time. I like really freaked out. I'm like, I don't want to be in this physical body, but like,
Hmm.
you can't do anything about it, unless you kill yourself. But I wasn't in that kind of
Right.
state. I wasn't going to do that. But I was like, holy crap, I'm trapped in my body. Like, this is horrible. I'm trapped in this whole little container.
I'm so restricted. What do I do?
Yeah, and I really started to freak out. I felt really, really bad. Really, it was horrible. It was really horrible. And then this voice, as if it spoke inside my stomach, inside my belly, around my solar plexus area. It felt like it was coming from there. It said, something like, but believe, just believe. No, it said, accept your infinite consciousness. This is what it said to me. It said, accept your infinite consciousness, this voice that spoke inside my belly or inside my heart or my chest or something. Felt a bit lower than my heart. It said, accept your infinite consciousness. And it was like, I felt so bad. I had no option.
You had to surrender right now because there's nowhere else to go.
Yeah, it was like, okay, I accept I'm infinite consciousness. I give in. I just accept I'm infinite consciousness. And as soon as I accepted I was infinite consciousness. Something inside me just accepted it. It did. I did accept it. I accepted I was infinite consciousness. I like 100% knew, believed, and accepted that I was infinite consciousness in my true nature. And as soon as I accepted that I was infinite consciousness, this horrible pain and darkness and suffering, unbearable suffering, shifted in an instant to like bliss and euphoria.
Oh, beautiful.
And expanded into like heaven, into like bliss and euphoria and just like ecstasy. And so after that, every step I took through the forest, I got higher and higher and higher and higher. And I remember at one point I was in the forest and I thought to myself, that after studying all these teachings about synchronicity and how when you're on a very high frequency, synchronicities can happen, I thought to myself, maybe I'm going to meet my soulmate, my twin flame, my romantic soulmate.
Right, sure.
Here, right now. And then I thought, no, that's not why I'm here. I'm here to meet the ETs. I just like knew. I just knew. I don't know how I knew. I just knew that was what was happening.
Kind of like the story that your ego mind keeps telling you is the first thing that comes up, but then something else, right? Like, but then the next real thing comes up is like, no, actually, this is what it is. You're here to follow a new path.
Yeah, and I remember after that, I was following my intuition through the forest, like whatever way, and it was almost like it was like, should I go left or right? And down right, sometimes I could almost see these little sparkles of light, like go this way, go this way.
Okay.
And I remember getting to this specific fork in the forest, and I felt to go down one direction. And at that point, as I went down there, I believe I had contact. But at that point, like my frequency went very, very high. I had this specific feeling that is the most amazing feeling I've ever experienced on Earth, and it's only happened one other time, and that was when I had contact in 2018, which I'll get to in a minute because I remember more of that. But basically, it was the same experience. But in the 2009 experience, on the third day of my 33rd birthday, which I actually found out was exactly 3 months, 3 weeks, and 3 days before December the 21st, 2012, the famous day.
The Mayan calendar end.
The Mayan calendar end. So there's a lot, and Bashar always says like they're connected to threes. And of course, I've now taken on the name Trinity as like kind of my spiritual name. So this is my thing. And so with all this synchronicity, something happened. It's like I believe I had contact with the ETs at that moment, but I remember nothing. It's quite common in ufology to have experiences with ETs that you don't remember.
Right, sort of, maybe kind of like a time loss almost. Like, like a blank space, sort of in your memory.
Yeah, missing time. Like traditionally in like abduction stories, like someone will be driving down the road, and the next thing they know, they're parked on the side of the road, and they look at the clock, and 4 hours has gone. And they're like,
right, they don't know what happened
in the morning, and they're like, last thing they knew, it was like 11 p.m. Now it's 3 a.m. and they're parked on the side of the road, and they're like, okay, let's not tell anyone about this.
Yeah, this is weird. Everybody's gonna think I'm nuts.
Yeah, exactly. And so they don't tell anyone except for the few that are brave enough to come forward. And so I believe I had a contact experience then, but I don't remember anything. But like I remember after that I started getting paranoid, possibly because I'd smoked the weed.
Sure, yeah.
and like some fear thoughts came in because I started hearing military craft flying over the woods quite high up. And actually now looking back, they probably were there because I had a contact experience, quite likely, because if I tell you about the next experience, they were definitely there because of me when I definitely had contact. I'll tell you about that in a minute. But so I started getting paranoid that they were there for me, and stuff from movies started coming up. Maybe they're going to catch me and take me to a secret facility and inject me and something, tests on me, and some weird Steven Spielberg scenario or something.
The nightmare scenarios start running through your head.
Literally like movie programming. I realized that all these movies they kind of program us subconsciously without remembering. So it's like fears from the media, from movies, it's kind of that coming up. And
it's not any different than how people feel about sharks because of Jaws, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so I remember.
No, go ahead. I was just trying to help you find your spot again. I know. We are at an hour. I just want to make sure that your time is still good for, being able to.
Yeah, we can keep going. I feel like I've only just started. I can't believe we've been going an hour. Time seems to go faster when I talk about this stuff.
Yeah, time isn't real anyway, right? So it's, it's one of those things.
I really can't believe it's been an hour. I thought I'd been talking about 20 minutes. So
yeah, that's all right. No, I wanted to be mindful of your time.
Yeah, I'm fine. So yeah, basically I freaked out, and I remember I was hiding under this tree stump. There was this tree. It was an interesting part of the story actually. So I ended up hiding, like I was freaked out. I was
They're coming
really
to get me. I have
the
to.
military were coming and get me in these helicopters or whatever. I think it was like excess paranoia due to smoking the weed, but so I was hid under this tree stump. And it was where a tree had fallen over. If like a huge tree falls over, and you can see the roots on the end. They
yeah.
Up, and I was hidden under here in the mud, almost like Arnold Schwarzenegger in Predator.
Yeah, for sure.
He was covering himself in the mud. I was
I gotta camouflage myself here a little bit. I gotta match the tree.
Yeah. So I was partly paranoid. I think I was kind of paranoid. It's kind of ridiculous, but hey ho.
It happens. It's okay.
Yeah. So I'm in the forest, and then I suddenly remembered this story because I was doing a gardening course, because my old profession was a professional gardener. I was doing a gardening course at college, and I remember I suddenly remembered the instructor telling this story in chainsaw safety class about how when someone was cutting, so two people were this horrible story. Two people were sawing up a tree, and one person was stood in this area where I was below the roots, and the other person chopped the tree in half, and the tree stood up because it didn't have the weight on it, and killed the guy stood underneath the roots. So sorry about sharing that story, but that came to my mind, and I was like, shit, I need to.
I have to get out of here. I might get crushed.
Yeah. That I got this paranoia thing, for many reasons.
Yeah,
I was kind of paranoid, and so I was like, I need to get out. But as soon as I had that thought, something really strange happened, because until that point I was still kind of in heaven, this kind of bliss state where everything was more colorful, everything looked more vivid. It's literally like in this state,
everything goes into HD sort of.
Yeah. I like that term. I've used that term myself. I've heard someone else use that term in ufology, and but it wasn't so much what I felt at the time, because HD didn't exist back in 2000.
You didn't have the terminology for it.
Yeah, I didn't have that terminology. But I remember it became more vivid, more colorful, more bright. I felt kind of connected to everything. There was all these animals around me while I was lying there. I was surrounded by animals. I could also kind of hear footsteps, like the ETs were walking around in their ship, overlaid in another dimension or something. I'm not sure.
Oh, interesting.
But I remember as soon as I had that fear-based thought, it was like this frost came over, like this. It was before everything was colorful and bright and vivid, but as soon as I shifted into the fear, all this heaven suddenly kind of turned. It reminds me of the scene from Avatar, the movie. Can you remember when they've burnt down the tree and everything's grey all of a sudden, and there's all the ash?
There's sort of if a different filter in your vision, it becomes less colorful, and there's it's like a gray filter almost over the scene.
Yeah, interestingly, the Avatar movie came out basically, I think, exactly 3 months after this experience.
All those threes.
Yeah, it was December the 18th, 2009. I recently realized. So another 3, and I thought this was a movie about me when Avatar came out, because after this I had this experience where I'd be like kind of I'd go to the forest and I'd smoke a bit of weed and it put me back into this bliss state, into this
Mm-hmm.
heavenly state where everything's more brighter, more colorful. And that's what it's like in the Avatar movie, isn't it? You know, when he's in his wheelchair, he's like all depressed, and then he puts the Avatar body on, and all of a sudden he's in heaven. Everything's more bright, everything's more colorful. He's like
Mm-hmm.
playing with the forest. But then there's also this scene in Avatar, the movie, which I felt was a movie about me. It was so strange. And like, I understand now it kind of was. You know, it sounds egotistical, but when you understand that this is reality is an illusion and we're creating our own dream reality around us.
Right. That you create the things, you connect to the things that speak to you in that way that sort of show you, this is something that is part of your story too.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and so there's this scene in the Avatar movie where all of a sudden he you know, remember that they bomb the tree, the sacred tree, and all of a sudden everything goes, there's ash falling everywhere, and all of a sudden it goes from this beautiful, bright, vivid, colourful lights and blue to this very grey scene, you know, where he's wandering or lost, and he feels like, you know, everyone's abandoned him because they think it was
Mm-hmm.
his fault that the tree got burnt down, and it was very similar to that because as soon as this fear came in, it was like this frost came over, and it reminds me of a movie, something like I've never found the movie, but I've always said I'm going to rewatch The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe because that movie,
Oh,
those
sure.
sort of era of those kind of movies comes to mind, and which I'm sure are based on like spiritual truths, and it basically all went from this vivid, bright color to this frost coming over, and everything it literally came from the distance when
Kind of
mist.
like the fog, right?
Yeah,
In John Carpenter's The Fog, it just sort of like shifts in, and all of a sudden your filter is different.
yeah. And all of a sudden, like as the fear came in, everything went all grey and scary. And like I ended up running out the forest. Like literally. But it's another thing I remember actually. I was like running through the forest. And like after having all these experiences, like with the traffic lights and that, I had another similar experience because like I was still seriously nervous that like the military were coming to get me. I was kind of
Right.
paranoid. Who knows? Maybe there were like, but I
Well, and
probably
if
not.
there was some kind of craft in the area, anything in the airspace, they're going to check out. So
Yeah, exactly.
but in that state, you do get that paranoia. It's about me, and I'm in
Yeah,
trouble now. And
exactly. I think it was
Mhm.
more paranoia, but there was definitely some truth to it, as you'll see as I tell the next part of the story 9 years later. Um, and so I ran and I was in thick forest, yeah, and and I was like escaping. I felt like I was escaping. I just wanted to get back to the path, back to my car, and get out of there. And
Mhm.
like,
Get
and
home,
like
get back to safe space, right?
yeah, I remember asking myself, like in my mind, like I was in this higher state of consciousness where I was connected to my soul. I felt like I'd become my soul on earth. And I said to myself, what would the Mysticon people do? And I felt like the Mysticon people. I think that's a name from Star Trek or something like
Hmm.
this. But I looked it up. So, but I felt like these Mysticon people were non-physical beings that lived on Earth many thousands of years ago. And I was like, what would the Mysticon people do? Because that was my soul, and I had access to like all information of all lives and that. So I knew all about Earth's history. So I was tapping into something to do with some non-physical beings that lived on Earth many thousands of years ago. And I was like, what would the Mysticon people do? And they said, just believe that the forest will open up in front of you, and it will. So I literally just ran full pelt through the forest. I even lost one of my shoes. One of my shoes came up, and I
Oh
picked it up
no.
and carried it the rest out.
Oh
And I had
jeez.
thorns in my foot. I was pulling thorns out my foot for the next
Oh
week.
Lord.
But like I was like, okay, believe the forest is going to open up in front of you, and it will, and it did. I just literally ran full pelt through the forest. You know, normally you just run straight into a tree, and like
Right.
it did. It was like the forest opened up, and I just ran straight through the forest with full speed. It's impossible to run through a forest full speed. You know, a dense forest, even like you know, a semi-dense forest, you got to dodge the trees. But I didn't. I ran dead straight like that,
Right.
full speed, dead straight through the forest, and trusted that the trees would open up for me. And I did. I ran straight through the forest without hitting a single tree. I swear
That's
to God.
again, but that creating your reality, right? Like, okay, if you believe that you can do it, and you will.
Exactly,
So
exactly.
it's sort of your logical, ego mind has to create that whatever explanation is most comfortable for it, right? But really it's like, no, you can absolutely do anything. You can do that. Of course you can run
Yeah,
through the
yeah,
forest, but your logical mind if it's in the way, that's when you will hit a tree.
Yeah, and I believed it 100%. I knew it to be true because I was in my soul. I didn't have my mental filter. I think partly
Hmm.
because I'd had this contact experience, I didn't remember it. It amped up my frequency to the level of the ETs. I was in a much higher frequency. I literally felt, that's how I described it at the time. I was my soul on earth. I was no longer my mind, ego, thought-based construct.
Hmm.
I was my soul of pure consciousness, access to infinite intelligence. I was a soul consciousness, which is very different to a human consciousness. We don't have any of the beliefs of a human experience, like from down here, any limiting beliefs at all.
Right.
Obviously, because a human doesn't believe that the forest will open up if you run through it.
Right. Well, it isn't that kind of the goal of, where we human consciousness sort of evolution and upgrade is to get into that space where you release the limiting beliefs and you allow yourself to create your highest reality and to experience your highest reality in this, the holographic light show that we think is so physical and so rigid and so, solid. So, and that's part of the thing that really fascinates me, though, especially about your story, is that this journey you're on, sort of like it's helped you to get into that space where reality can be different and can be what you want it to be and can be something where, like, well, of course there's extraterrestrials and of course you can talk to them and of course they want to be helpful and friendly with us, and it's definitely a very different consciousness than the human consciousness that we have known, certainly from movies and things like that.
Yeah, exactly. It's very, very, very different. And so I'll just quickly share what happened in 2018, and then you can maybe ask some questions if you have any.
Yeah.
So, so basically, the same experience happened in 2018. I felt it was going to happen again. I felt the experience was going to happen again. I felt it was going to happen because it was exactly 9 years later, which is three plus three plus three, which is my
I
number.
love all the threes.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
So
kind
I
of funny. The threes, the repeating threes and repeating twos or something for me. So it's kind of a funny little
awesome.
synchronicity for me that that's something for you.
Yeah, thank you. And it definitely feels like synchronicity that we connected today because, like, I definitely found excitement to come on your podcast.
I
So,
love it. And you're the first channeler that I've had for the podcast. So I'm really excited about it. So
yeah, thank
I
you.
love it. Who knows what part of the journey we're on that it might reveal itself now, right? I love it.
Yeah, yeah. And
But
so
so,
so
yeah, sorry,
yes,
2018.
yeah. So 2018, I knew something was going to happen. I'd even made so I've got some YouTube on my channel like a month or so before saying I expected something was going to happen. Um, I expected it was going to happen on the solstice, which was because it was the solstice it happened on before, 3 days after my 33rd birthday on the 18th. The solstice was the 21st that year, so it was on the solstice day. No, not the solstice, the equinox, sorry, the
Mm-hmm.
September equinox. And so I felt something was going to, I suspected it was going to happen again on the 23rd of September, 2018. I think it was the equinox day that year, because the equinox fluctuates a couple of days. And so it didn't. It happened on September the 11th. I was supposed to be working. I was still working in my gardening business then. I decided I was going to cancel the job on 9/11. Of course, I was into 9/11 conspiracies originally,
Right.
so it feels like there was something going on there. It was a significant day for me. So it was 9/11, September the 11th, exactly a week before my birthday. I went to the forest. Again, I had a little bit of weed. Again, after quite a break as well, because cannabis is much more powerful if you only use it very occasionally.
Right. Right.
Like if you use it all the time, it doesn't really have any spiritual benefit. But if you use it
Mm-hmm.
very occasionally, it can like give you an opening and clarity to look at everything you've experienced without it. So it's a very powerful spiritual tool if you use it just a little and very rarely.
Right.
And so this was the case. That day, I managed to manifest some very high quality marijuana, which is extremely rare in the UK,
Mm-hmm.
synchronistically. I believe it was called sage for those of you that know about this. And so it's rare to get that quality stuff in the UK. But like I was in the forest and like so I sat down. I was at this campsite, like a bushcraft place where I discovered this little hidden away bushcraft site where they teach kids bushcraft.
Right. Sure.
Um, So I was sat there and I smoked a little bit of this weed and I felt these energies coming on again. These exact same energies I remembered from my experience in 2009. I just recalled where everything becomes like, as you see, HD,
Right.
everything becomes more vivid. It feels like kind of ecstasy. It's the most amazing feeling. Like after that first experience, I literally spent like the next 8 years trying to get back to that
Like
state.
recreate it. Yeah.
Yeah, never succeeded. And I realized that's kind of a spiritual trap to try and recreate experiences. That's another story. And but it started to happen again in 2018, 9 years later, September the 11th, about 10 o'clock, Monday morning, I believe it was. I think it was Monday morning, it might have been Tuesday morning. So I think it was Monday the first, definitely Monday the first time. But like, and the next thing I know, okay, like I can feel like my consciousness really expanding. So I now understand that ETs were coming in and they were getting close, even though I couldn't see them. I was merging with their aura, their energy field, and that's why I was merging into bliss and ecstasy, and kind of like this multidimensional consciousness where you know you're connected to infinity and you know anything's possible. And I felt like I had the ability to download kung fu, and I was literally like doing kung fu
Yeah.
moves.
Like very the Matrix, right?
Yeah, exactly. Very Neo in the Matrix. But that's exactly what I was doing. And I've since talked about this and actually made videos of me doing like Kung Fu. Even though I had no martial arts training. It looks ridiculous. It looks hilarious. But like I know all the moves. I know that I can still tap into it now since that experience. I can download martial arts and do all these moves, even though they're not very good because I'm not actually trained in martial arts.
Right.
I can
Not
do
practice.
I know how to do them all. And because I don't know if it's a past life or just tapping into the Akashic record or what, but I actually started to do it in the forest. Kind of embarrassing. I'm in the forest on my own, smoking weed. Who doesn't
But
do stupid
again,
things?
your highest joy, and that's
Yeah.
follow it if it feels right.
But it felt like there was this energy in me, and it felt like I was just playing. I felt like I know now, looking back now, I can see I was in a higher dimensional state, and it's like it feels like you're a being of pure energy. You don't feel like a biological organism anymore in this state. It's like you become a being of pure energy, directly tapped into source consciousness, and you just don't feel biological. You don't feel like you need food. You don't feel like you need to breathe. You just feel like, obviously I did still need to breathe,
Right.
obviously, but it's like
Lucky
you
us,
feel,
our body does that for us, right? We don't have to think about it.
yeah. But like I just, it's like I become a multidimensional like soul being, and it's like kind of like you become your soul like on Earth. That's how I experienced it the first time. And so I'm playing around doing these kung fu moves, like thinking, "Whoa, I'm fucking the Matrix."
Yeah.
I remember I had and after that I started to see multidimensionally. I remember I was actually looking in a bush, and I could actually see different timelines or multidimensionally in front of me. And I believe this is somehow how the ETs experience reality. And this is why I was seeing like that.
Okay.
I could see like it was, imagine you got like 10 TV screens in front of you, or it was more like eight like TV screens in front of you. And each one of them is a possible reality that you could end up on in the rest of your day, depending on the decisions you make, depending on if you decide to go to work, so decide to stay in the forest, decide to take the right path instead of the left path. I could see all different realities that I would end up in that day, depending on the decisions that I made that day and where I would focus my consciousness. And so I remember at this point, I was like, I need to email David Wilcock. Have you heard of David Wilcock?
Yes, I do know who. Yep, I know his stuff too. The synchronicity key, and yep, I'm familiar with his work.
Because he's a big researcher of this information, and I never ended up emailing him because he must get he's so big, he must get like hundreds of
Oh, I've
like,
absolutely emailed like
every
Graham
day.
Hancock and other people like that. Like, I'm sure they do, and who knows, follow the feeling if it hits you, because you never know
maybe
if
I
it's
should
going
have
to come back.
emailed him. Something might have told him to follow up on it. Who knows? But when I came back to it, I was like, David Wilcock's he must get hundreds of emails like this every day. So I didn't bother. But that was the thought I had at the time. And anyway, the next thing I know, so 1 minute, right? I had this missing time thing again, yeah. But now I'm conscious of it. I know it's happened because they dropped me off in a different part of the forest. So 1
Interesting.
minute, yeah. So 1 minute, I'm looking into this bush. I can see multidimensionally. I can see parallel realities, different realities depending on what decisions I take, and I guess depending on what the focus of my consciousness. And then the next thing and it's kind of dark, and I'm looking into this dark bush, like I'm looking away from the sun, like the sun's behind me, and it's kind of dark. And the next thing I know, I'm stood up in a full prone position, kind of like this, like arms out straight, dead straight up like this, arms out like kind of prone. Is that the word? Like just like arms out straight, legs out straight. It's kind of like I've been reinserted in reality.
Like your avatar just dropped back right into the
Yeah.
video game, sort of.
Yeah, which was kind of what I think happened. And the lighting's all changed. Instead of it being all dark, like the sun's shining in my face. I seem to be. I feel like I've just turned round. That was the feeling I had at the time. Like I just turned round and I'm facing the other way. And I felt like I was in a slightly different position. I'm now fairly certain I was in quite a different location, because where I came out on the path, it was the opposite side of the path I popped out onto where I was originally. So I now believe they actually dropped me off, perhaps like quarter of a mile away in a different part of the forest, to where I came up the path later. So I'm stood here in this prone position. My frequency has gone much, much higher, even though I was in kind of ecstasy and bliss and like this 4D, HD reality before. I actually made a video about this the other day. I said, you've heard of 4D, 5D. Well, this is how you shift to HD.
Yeah, I like it.
and so I'm stood in this position like this, and there's all fighter jets flying around my head, like really low down, like deafening, like right above my head. I can't see them because there's cloud cover and also very thick forest canopy, tree canopy, but mainly because of the cloud covers, I can't see them. I can sure as heck hear them, because they are swarming around my location. There was at least, I believe there were 2 fighter jets and 1 other plane that sounded different, more like a radar plane or something.
Yeah.
And they were all circling on my location. I could tell, like from the sound, that they were like going up and this, and it was too difficult for them to circle, because a fighter jet can't go in small circles like this, can
it?
It has to do wide circles. So I could tell that they were kind of going up and banking and coming down at an angle like this from the sound they were making to stay on my location, and they were like circling round me. And so I'm stood here like this, and I know something happened. I know something profound has happened. Like my frequency has gone through the roof. I feel connected to everything. I'm in a state of oneness where I'm directly connected to everything, directly connected to the trees, directly connected to the fighter jets. They're like in my aura, and they're part of me. That's what I felt. And my frequency is like an octave higher, even though it was kind of the highest I'd ever been before. I remember, like before that, and I'm kind of like kind of buzzing. That's where I can experience it. And so I know these fighter jets are there because of me. I just know, like something's happened, like very profound. I know these fighter jets are there because of me. I don't know what's happened, but then after a few seconds, it starts to dawn on me, because it's like my mind's completely blank at first. I'm just in this situation out of nowhere. Like an instant before, I was just having this like experience in the bush. There was no fighter jets anywhere. It was dead silent, perfectly peaceful Tuesday morning or whatever day it was, Monday, Tuesday morning in the forest. And then an instant later, I'm still in this prone position. My frequency's gone through the roof. The lighting's different. I seem to be facing in another direction. I know I'm fairly certain I was a different part of the forest. And there's all these fighter jets flying around my head, and I'm like, well, something major's happened there here because of me. And then after a few seconds, it kind of started to dawn on me. My memory started to kick back in. I'm like, oh, I probably had a contact experience. I'm sure this is what's happened. This makes sense why I'm in this strange position. I don't know what's happened. And the fighter jets are all around me. So I start to realize that I probably had a contact experience. At that point, I start to get a bit nervous again.
The paranoia comes up again.
Yeah, but this time with more valid reason. There's like
because there's a lot of noise going on, a lot of chaos.
Yeah, and I'm in the forest on my own, in the morning, and there's all these fighter jets. So now I start to get nervous, and I feel I got more valid reason this time, because they're clearly there because of me. And so these kind of fear thoughts come back up again. Maybe they are going to come get me. Same kind of thoughts again, but with more valid reason perhaps this time. And so what the thought comes to me, like the best thing you can do right now is to start singing pop songs at the top of your voice.
Sure. Why not? That seems like a safety measure.
So who could make this stuff up? I don't know. But, a very creative mind. But so my thinking was that I needed to control the situation vibrationally. Somehow I knew that in this very high frequency state, I was creating my reality at a higher rate because the law of attraction works more faster the more higher
Right.
frequency we are. Yeah. So
Sure.
because I'm in this very high frequency state on the level of the conscious DETs, I knew that I was creating my reality in the moment. And I knew I had to stay high frequency, otherwise perhaps something weird could happen.
Right. You'd create
Literally.
something if you
Yeah,
let the
yeah,
fear vibrations
yeah.
come in right now.
Exactly. So I knew from this very high vibrational state, instinctively, intuitively, that I had to keep my vibration high, so I didn't, so that I created a positive outcome from this situation for me. And so I knew I had to dominate the situation with my energy. I could not let the fighter jets instill fear in me.
Right.
I had to take control of the situation. I had to project my aura out and dominate the field with unconditional love, with pure energy of unconditional love, so that their fear-based energy, because they were probably freaking out, they're chasing the
Oh,
UFOs.
for sure. Yeah. And the scenario, the situation itself,
Yeah,
again, in the human consciousness is generally lends itself to something fearful, something dangerous. Again, from pop culture to what we hear about in the news, that's where your mind goes. So yeah,
yeah,
definitely that situation of, okay, if I don't want to create those things that I know are the sort of typical automatic fearful things, I have to project out something that is more positive in order to keep this situation a more positive situation for me.
yeah, yeah. And also, like, because I was in that higher consciousness, because I was kind of transcending the fear, you come to a place of very strong courage and very strong fearlessness. And I was kind of like, F you. Like, I've done nothing wrong. You get out my reality. This was kind of my
Right.
energy at the minute. Like I've done nothing wrong. Like, I've had contact with ETs. You know, go away. Like, get out of here. Like, F off. Like,
Right.
I've done nothing wrong. You can get screwed. That was kind of my energy. You can fuck off with your fucking fighter jet. Sorry,
Yeah.
my language.
No, you're
But that,
fine.
but that was the energy I was in at the minute. I was like, get out of here. Like just like, I'm not scared. You can go screw yourselves. Like,
Yeah.
trying to, like, what are you doing here? Like, this has nothing to do with you. And like,
Mind your
there's
own
no,
business. I'm having my own little thing
yeah,
here.
yeah, 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 yeah. This
Yeah.
is our reality. We're here to help us. And like, so from this vibrational state, I knew that I realized the best way I could dominate the field, dominate this, square mile that I felt my aura was projected into, that was encompassing the jets and the trees and everything. The best way to like dominate that field that's around me with unconditional love was to sing very high vibration or fairly high vibration pop songs at the top of my voice. And I actually started, I believe the first one I sung was Jason Donovan, I Am the One and Only, if anyone knows that song.
I was gonna say, I'm sorry, I'm from America, so I'm not probably familiar with the same kind of pop music that you have in the UK. But
Yeah.
certainly some of it probably to do with the emotions that you have though with the music
Yeah,
itself.
exactly.
That like it's something that is a trigger for you to a higher vibration or to something more
Yeah,
joyful or
and to
gives
step
you a
in,
sense of power.
yeah, exactly. Step into my own power and step out of fearness and like,
Mm-hmm.
and I was also
And you know
aware.
what? That's really kind of a beautiful thing, though. If you're having a hard time or if you're in a really fearful space, do you have a trigger like that that's maybe seems childish, right? To just start singing a pop song or what have you. But like in terms of law of attraction and vibration and how you create your reality, it's like, as much as we've been conditioned as adults to believe that that's something silly, well, it does actually work because you're creating the vibration of what you actually want to experience. And so your reality has to mirror that back to you, so it is actually like a really it was the right thing to do, obviously, right? Like
Yeah,
as much as it might seem a bit silly to like start singing pop songs, well, that was how you got the vibration that you wanted to be put out to be reflected back to you.
yeah. And I was kind of like, F you, I can do what I want. You know what I mean? Like, what are you going to do about it? Like,
Right.
that was like, I've done nothing wrong. That was really it. Kind of F you, like, I can do what I want. What are you going to do about it? I don't care. Yeah, this is
Mm-hmm.
your issue.
I'm just
you,
chilling in the
you,
forest.
yeah, you decide how to deal with this. This is
Yeah,
how I'm
go
going to deal
home
with
and do
it.
your paperwork. I don't care.
Yeah. And I was also aware that there were probably dog walkers not too far away, like Monday, Tuesday. I think it was probably a Monday morning, like walking their dogs.
Yeah,
And
sure.
I wanted to draw attention to myself because I wanted to make. I felt safer if I were to draw attention to myself
Right,
and make the
sure.
dog walkers aware that something very, very crazy was going on, and to kind of draw attention to myself, like basically, because I felt I was safer if I would draw
Safety in
attention to
numbers,
myself.
kind of.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I didn't care less about like sounding stupid, which you would do in a normal state of
Right.
consciousness. But like, so I wanted to draw the attention of the dog walkers. I saw one of them afterwards. He I'll tell you in a minute. But and so yeah, so I did this, and like I spent about the next, I don't know, it felt like almost an hour, like walking around the forest. I couldn't find my way out, even though the path was not far away. It was like I wasn't meant to leave the forest yet. I was just kind of walking around. At some point, I sat down on this log, and I connected in telepathically with the Yahyel who I had contact with at the time, because I started to remember it afterwards, and I connected in with the Yahyel, and I sensed into their consciousness, and we had this telepathic connection, and they're kind of like, dude, you're a crazy human. Like not about the situation, but just about kind of like how my ego was involved in portraying them and
Sure.
channeling them and stuff. Like it was kind of like, we love you unconditionally, but you need to find a bit more sacredness in your heart, kind of like you're a bit strange, human. Like we are.
You have a
Yeah.
lot of these.
Yeah.
It's kind of like unpeeling an onion, right? It's like, okay, you have all these layers on top of what really is on top of your true self. And you got to kind of let go of some of those things because it does filter the messages that they're trying to get to you. And it's like, I'm sure to them, a lot of the things that we're fearful of seem very silly.
Yeah. And it was kind of like the energy of, we're that we're nothing like the way you portrayed us, like
Sure.
like and like kind of annoyed with me, because like it's like you've been saying all these videos about us and channeling us, and like the channeling hasn't always been 100% accurate, and you're talking about us like it's some game or some joke, and like it ain't a joke and it ain't a game, and we're a whole civilization, and you're a representative of us to the planet Earth, and we're not totally happy with how you've been portraying us.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay. So maybe I don't know, sort of them saying, "Hey, respect that we have our own perspective on this, and it's not necessarily through the filter of your human ego, the things that you've been taught." So,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
not really at all. Yes, it's kind of that, and so I made the way outside. I after about an hour, I left the forest, and I remember I was walking down the path, and there was a man and a woman walking a dog. These people I was trying to get, and this guy was stood in the forest, actually in the very same position that I was in. He was like kind of meditating in an upright position in the forest. I think he'd been kind of freaked out. He'd obviously experienced,
well, maybe
probably
felt the
heard me.
energy, sure, of what was
Yeah, I
going
probably
on.
felt the energy. Yeah, I think he felt the energy as much as anything, and he
Hmm.
probably heard the jets, heard me singing, and like known something was going on, and felt the energy. And he was like stood. Oh, his wife was there holding the dog, and he was stood in the forest, obviously quite disheveled, like disoriented, and like unnerved, like kind of
Right.
meditating, in kind of like
Trying to
type
find
of
the center
meditation.
again.
Yeah, trying to like sort his
Yeah.
head out. And anyway, so I left quite rapidly and like sped out the car park at way beyond the 10-mile-an-hour speed limit, because I was nervous again. It's like a
Yeah.
10-mile-an-hour speed limit. I remember speeding out the car park about 30 miles an hour. There was a group of about 20 old women there on their women's outing to the forest, coffee morning or whatever it was. I was
Yeah.
like, zoom, sped past,
Yeah.
like, which I wouldn't normally do, but I just wanted to get out there. I was nervous. I felt unsafe. I
Hmm.
really felt like there was a threat to my life, possibly from the military. So I drove straight into the city. I felt the city was about 11 miles away. I drove straight down the main road into the city, 11 miles away, as fast as I could. Pulled up at a gas station right in the middle of the city, because I felt I was safe there. I
Right.
felt once I get to the city, I'm going to be safe. I'm at the gas station. If the military turn up, I'm going to start screaming. I was kind of in this energy, and I pulled up at a gas station, and Facebook Live straight away. Flipped on my phone and went Facebook Live and explained what had happened. And that Facebook Live is still on my phone. It was, like I say, it was September the 11th, 2018. If you search for
Hmm.
Facebook Lives from my 2011, I was highly emotional. As you can
Yeah.
imagine, I started
Very. Yeah.
crying. like screaming at the
Absolutely.
phone, saying like "F you military, F you reptilians," and all stuff like this. Like kind of a lot of
Yeah.
fears coming up about stuff, and like so this is all watchable. It's still on my Facebook lives from that date to the
Can
best of
follow
my
the
knowledge.
journey, right? From where you are, from where you were to where you are, right?
Yeah, and then so fast forwarding a little bit to September the 23rd, the equinox day 2018, when I initially felt the experience was going to happen. I got the intuition something was going to happen that day, the equinox day, but it didn't happen like 12 days earlier on the 11th, on the 23rd. I actually went out on the road back here, like back in Lincolnshire, no, back in Lincolnshire, and went along the lane along there and did a Facebook Live again. And I was going to do a channeling while walking along the road, which is very unusual. But I suddenly got this feeling that maybe the ETs are going to show up on the video.
Mm-hmm.
And I said that on the video. And so I'm walking along, and at some point I see, I'm not sure the exact sequence of events, but this live stream is still available, September the 23rd, 2018. The Yahyel show up on the ship. Right at the start of the video, there's two lights flying in parallel. I'll maybe share the link with you so you can drop the
Yeah, I
link
can
to
put that in
the
the,
video.
yeah, so
Because this
people
is
can
some
see it.
fantastic. So there's two lights flying in parallel over the house now, which I'm 99.99% sure with the Yahyel. I only saw one at the start, and I was like, I looked at it and I was like, whoa, that's interesting. And I was, oh, probably just the satellites, just
Right.
it's very bright. But on rewatching the replay of the live stream later, I noticed there's another one higher up. So there's two lights moving in exact timing, exact parallel timing
Right.
over the sky, which would be very rare for satellites. I've never seen satellites moving in parallel across the sky like that. And then later in the video, I see a flash out the corner of my eye. This is all on the live stream. You can all watch this. Haley's going to share the link to this.
Yeah.
So check out the link below somewhere. And I see a flash out the corner of my eye. I think at this point, all these owls start going choo 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 choo. Loads of owls, and
Okay.
there's a big thing in ufology about owl synchronicity with UFO sightings. A lot of
Oh, that's
UFO
interesting.
experience, yeah, a lot of UFO experience has taught about synchronicity with owls. There's actually a guy who's written 2 books on this, on the topics of owls and UFOs. So I'll maybe try and remember to share the link with you for that. So
Yeah,
it's
for
common
sure.
knowledge. So I see the, I think this is the time, and I see this flash out of the corner of my eye. I was like, did you guys? I was like on the video, did you? It was just as I finished telling the story. I've been telling this story that I've just relayed to you. No, 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 it wasn't. I was telling the story about being on the ship. So it must have. So I must have recalled it before this experience. I'll tell you in a minute. But I basically told the story of what happened on the ship, which I recalled in meditation, which must have been between 11 days, so about a week later. I remembered what happened on the ship, and so but basically, like after that flash, like I see the flash again up in the sky, I point the camera at it, and they flash us about 5 times on the camera, and you can all be seen in the live stream. You
Mm-hmm.
need to see it properly. You need to get it on a big screen in a darkened room, but you can very clearly see it when you get it on a good screen. So, and I'm like, what the yellow is? So they actually showed up, on this equinox date that I thought
Mm-hmm.
was going to happen. It's all in the
So
Facebook live
September
stream.
is kind of, your birthday month seems a bit significant for you with experiences, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I talked about this a lot. It's not the only time. It seems to. I think it's the energy is very very good for contact around the equinox time as well, which is
Sure.
3 or 4 days after my birthday. Normally, this balancing of energies. I think it's just a very good time of year for contact. If you look at, I notice a lot of UFO videos. They often see the date September 15th, something like this on them. It
Oh,
seems like
that's
common time.
interesting with the
Yeah.
timing. So, and I know that you've mentioned on some of your other videos the idea of sort of like anticipating more open contact with the IL like this September. And I have a lot of my own sort of like, you know, my brain gets a little bit wild thinking like, okay, is there a psychicness to like when you're sensing like, oh, I sense that they were going to come or I sense that this was going to happen. I always start asking myself now or lately, like, okay, am I sensing something that's going to happen or am I creating that something is going to happen because we create our own reality? Like, where is the line when it comes to like, what is psychicness that what's premonition and what is, I've just created it, And so like that sort of becomes a little convoluted in my mind sometimes. But I mean, that is interesting, that timing situation, and like, okay, well, why is that? What is the mechanics of why that works that way, sort of?
Yeah, but Bashar always says it's not this or that, it's this and that.
Right. Yeah, that's true. It's it's all true, right? All
Yeah,
truths
yeah.
are true.
Yeah, it's both. It's like the human mind tends to separate things out into black and white, right and wrong, this or that, what, why,
Right.
what. But reality isn't really like that. It's kind of all things happening simultaneously and connected in the background.
Mm-hmm.
So
So I did want to, I mean, I don't want to interrupt if you've got more to tell. And again, I want to be mindful of your time. But I did want to ask, so the Yahyel and like Bashar, I believe, says he's of the Essassani, if I say that right. Is do you know, I guess in my mind, I understood them to be very much sort of similar, in the sense of being like future humans, hybrid race between humans and grays. I don't, but I guess I'm a little bit confused as to that they're separate civilizations or consciousness groups. So that's kind of one of the things that I don't know if you, I don't know if you know the answer to that or not. Like, what's the difference between them?
yes, so from what I understand, and this information mainly comes from Bashar. I'm sure Yahyel have kind of shared similar things to me. And I will share my experience on the ship in a minute,
Yeah.
because that's part of the other story that some of your viewers are waiting for what actually happened on the ship. I remember the meditation. So I'll share that in a minute. But just to answer your question first, um, so what I understand, um, and this comes mostly from Bashar channeled through Dawalanka, is that the Greys, the classic Greys, the cartoon Greys, you've seen
Right.
that great comedy movie called Paul, like look
Oh,
very
yeah,
much
yeah.
like them, as I understand, with the big heads, the short bodies, the thin spindly arms, the thin spindly legs, no ear flaps,
Mm-hmm.
small noses, small mouths, big black eyes, and very big craniums. These Greys, also famous from Whitley Strieber's book, Communion. Um, these extraterrestrials that come from the Zeta Reticuli star system. Apparently, it was Betty and Barney Hill, the first famous abductees.
Right.
Betty was shown this image of a star system that years later, when scientists discovered it fully, she realized it was the Zeta Reticuli star system. I believe that's how the story goes. This
Mm-hmm.
is where these greys reside. But actually, this is where they're just kind of living, or they were living when they were doing the abductions. These are the beings famous for the abductions. Um, where people have this missing time, they beam them up, they put them on a bed, they do loads of horrific, scary procedures. And so these are actually parallel reality Earth humans. They're actually versions of us from a parallel timeline that became very technologically advanced, very telepathically advanced, but kind of went away from emotion
Mm-hmm.
and love and compassion, and more got obsessed with technology and advancements and telepathy. But they began to breed emotion
Sort
out
of,
of this.
if you look at our Earth, as we are now, kind of like science versus spirituality, and
Yeah,
going off
yeah,
into one direction very hard, and sort of pushing away the other, right? So
yeah.
pushing away the spiritual and focusing only on the sort of scientific.
Yeah, kind of like the Elon Musk timeline. No disrespect to Elon Musk, but he doesn't believe in spirituality. He believes
Mm-hmm.
he's going to find the answers by flight. That I heard Elon Musk say the main reason he started SpaceX because he believes the answers to the nature of reality. He's looking for the answers to the universe, the answers to what life is, and he believes the way to do that is to
So
go in
that's
space,
interesting,
literally.
though, isn't it? Like, but because
Yeah, yeah,
that is what it is, like very external, looking for the answers
yeah, yeah,
externally,
yeah,
whereas the
yeah.
spiritual is to find them within. So that's interesting.
So this is one of the lessons they've been sharing with us. You've got to find the balance. You've got to find your
Right.
heart. You've got to find your inner spirituality, your inner wisdom, your inner intuition. And so yes, so these are parallel reality Earth humans, and they bred out emotion from their civilization, and they kind of destroyed their planets as well. Like polluted, like we're
Yeah.
destroying our planet at present. This is one way our planet could go if we don't sort our stuff out. And so they ended up having to move underground. They destroyed the surface of their planet, and I believe that's why their eyes got so big and so black, because they didn't have so much light underground.
Oh, okay.
They mutated to grow these big black eyes so they could survive underground, but they also mutated to the point where they could no longer reproduce due to some of these reasons. And so through desperation to prolong their civilization, they used their advanced technology to teleport through to different parallel realities in search of viable genetic material to create a hybrid species with themselves to prolong their civilization, to extend, to keep their civilization alive. This was the sole goal of their civilization. They realized they couldn't reproduce, and it became the only thing they were concerned with. And they found us, basically. They found kind of the opposite, these beings that were extremely emotional,
Right.
extremely unstable.
Very, yeah.
And
a lot of emotions contained in one container, right?
yeah, exactly. So they start experimenting with us. This is what's happening in the abductions. Even though these grey beings, they're not evil, they're not nasty beings. They're kind of like us, tagging dolphins or something, or
Right.
just
They're
doing
just very
scientific
scientific,
experiments.
and it's
Yeah, very scientific. They don't experience emotion, so they don't really understand why we freak out so much when we're getting
right.
abducted and getting like all these probes in strange
Because that
places.
compassion element just isn't there. It's fully scientific.
Yeah.
It's fully academic, intellectual, and the feeling sense, the compassion sense isn't there. So it's not that they're malevolent in what they're doing. It's that they just don't understand emotions in the way that we do.
Yeah, and from what I understand, it goes a little bit deeper because us humans, our consciousness is very much compartmentalized into a higher consciousness, a normal consciousness, and an unconscious.
Mm-hmm.
And from a higher perspective, the story goes that we actually agreed to these abductions. Those of us that
Right.
have gone through abduction experiences agreed from a soul level because they knew it would assist with the spiritual expansion of our race if
Mm-hmm.
we would go through this and create a hybrid species. So they don't understand our compartmentalized consciousness, where we have a higher self, a soul that knows we agreed to these experiences, a human self that doesn't know what the heck's going on,
Right.
and an unconscious that tends to go freaking psycho when it gets being probed by greys. And
Yeah.
so they were very shocked because apparently their consciousness isn't segmented in the way we are. They're connected to their higher selves, so they know on a soul level we agreed this. So when they abduct us and put us in a bed, they can't understand why we're freaking out and trying to kill them. And so they don't really understand us at all, and they've got no emotion, so they don't really understand us from an intellectual point of view or an emotional point of view.
Right.
And at the same time, they need our eggs and they need our semen to create a hybrid species to prolong their race. So they're kind of abducting us, putting us on this table, sedating us, using their magic wands, as it's sometimes called, to make us unconscious so we can't move. And then they're extracting eggs and semen, genetic material. And of course, this is horrific for anyone who goes through this experience and remembers it in meditation or in hypnosis, regression, or whatever. But they're not evil. They're just carrying out their scientific experiment. They're kind of neutral and kind of carrying out this scientific they need our material that we've agreed upon from a higher level, as I understand it. And so they've been creating a hybrid species. They've created from this, in kind of test tubes in big vials. Some people remember visions of seeing like very scary looking hybrid children in huge test tubes on the ships. And they've created a lot of the initial experiments weren't successful, unfortunately, and kind of quite horrific. And sad to say, but eventually they were successful, and they produced like 5 or so hybrid races, different races of different.
Oh, so there's multiple. So that's so you've got like the Ssani, the Yahyel. They're sort of from the same project, I guess you could say, but they're different races.
Perhaps different phases, like phase 1, like Yahyel, phase 2, Sasani, phase 3, Playel.
Okay.
And there's 2 others as well. And Playel, that's what I call him. I think Bashar's name was something similar to that. I've connected with him a few times. Yes, and they're from the future, but they've cut so to confuse it even more, like the society of like these hybrid race that they've created like in the now, like over the past 20, 40 years. I don't think the abductions are going on so much anymore, like this hybridization part. I think it's
Right.
like
It's
20
like
to 40
they've
years ago.
talked about more sort of in a fifth dimensional space, being able to create from a, the fifth dimensional space. And maybe that's partly because humanity has sort of evolved a bit in their own consciousness, shifted more into the fourth density, fifth dimensional space. And so there's, you don't need to have that sort of physical um experience necessarily in the same way.
Yeah, quite possibly. Yeah, I've not heard that one exactly, but it makes sense. And yeah, and so there's the beings known as the hybrid children, which are kind of like the hybrids from in our timeline. They're perhaps 20 or 40 from the experiences that have happened, over the past 50 years or so. And and then there's also like because time doesn't exist in the high dimensions, and the ETs
Right. Linear
of
time is us. That's us humans.
yeah, exactly. So the ETs can use their ships to just like skip in and out of time, like time, they can go to like 10,000 years ago or 5,000 years in the future. Time doesn't really exist when you've got an interdimensional hyperspace quantum, I don't know what it is, craft or whatever they
Right.
fly
Yeah.
around. So they've come back from the future to assist us. They understand that now on Earth we're going through this period of intense and incredible spiritual transformation, where we're shifting from this belief that we're separate individuals who are just biological organisms existing on a hostile world. When we die, that's it, our consciousness ends.
Right.
But we're going through this shift into this understanding that actually this experience is an experience that exists within our own consciousness. We're creating it as we go. It's all a dream, it's all an illusion. And actually, we're all bliss, love, light, beings of infinite consciousness, creating our reality as we go. And so this is incredible, like from ETs and angels and all beings watching our civilization at this time. Like Earth is where it's happening. There's very few places in
Right.
creation that are going through like this crux period right now of kind of darkness into the light, kind of the belief in separation and fear and all the horrible stuff going on Earth into a reality where we suddenly remember our
I sup
divinity and our self
I suppose it's
consciousness.
kind of like watching, little animals learn how to walk somehow. It's a little
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
like, oh look, they're finally getting it, isn't it? Kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, imagine if like a group of like pet cats suddenly started picking up bow and arrows and doing archery.
Yeah,
Then
sure.
it would be like, holy crap!
It's a pretty big thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Very
and
cool. So I do want to get again, sorry, I'm just trying to be mindful of your time. So your experience, you said on the ship that was you sort of like remembered post experience, I guess you would say.
yes. So I thought I remembered it like 1 to 2 weeks after, but you've just helped me remember that I must have had it remembered it in that intervening period between September the 11th and the equinox. So I made the video on September the 23rd on the equinox because I told the story that I remembered on the equinox video. So I probably remembered it about a week after the experience. I was meditating on the beach, Lincolnshire beach, but I can't remember exactly what it was. It was quite a remote one. I'm sat near like a sewage outfall pipe. Actually, interestingly, I think that's kind of symbolic.
Yeah, purging the things you need to get rid of, right?
Yeah, and there was very much some of that. So I sit down in the meditation and I start to recall being on the ship. I start to recall being in like what looked to me like a hotel room with a white bed and a white dressing table and a mirror in front of me, and everything was white. And my Yahyel counterpart, Tahinio, that I channel, is sat next to me, and he's got a towel over his head. Uh,
Okay.
the story only gets weirder, doesn't it? I tell you, prepare yourselves. This is not what you think this is. It just gets weirder
Yeah.
and weirder. And he sat there with a towel over his head. And I think it's something to do with me not being quite ready to see him, not being quite ready for his consciousness. I think there's probably some deep humorous message behind this that I'm going to laugh at one day.
Yeah.
Something to do with like psychology and some symbolic meaning of a towel over the head. I'm sure there's some joke I'm not getting here that I'm going to get one day. But
Right.
anyway,
Well,
that's
yeah, very again, it's like there's so much of that human ego perception filter in front of everything that you're experiencing. And so it's like, okay, I'm creating from my perspective, I've created this white room with you with a towel over your head. It's kind of interesting then to wonder, okay, well, what are you seeing from your perspective? of what's happening right now. Am I putting that, is that something I've put on your head to like cover up what I'm not prepared for or something like that?
It's definitely something like that. I can kind of hear the ETs laughing in the background now, actually, kind of telling me that there is some joke there that one day I will get.
I love it.
But anyway, so so what I felt I needed to do was like to go into his consciousness, to focus through the towel into his head and like connect with him. That's what I felt. So I'm doing this, and what he shows me is the first thing he shows me is all the suffering that my father experienced due to me in my life.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, very
Like
interesting.
a little, I guess some heavy therapy, I suppose, right?
Yeah, kind of like a life review thing. You hear these
Mm-hmm.
people in near death experiences where they get to face
Yes.
all the bad things, they get shown all the bad things they've done in their life and how it affected the other people. They see it from both points of view, that like this was your father, this is what you did to him, this was how your father experienced it. So you can understand, just grow. It's not really
Right.
judgment, it's just so you can get a deeper
Right.
understanding of what you've done, the mistakes you've made, and learn not to do them in the future. It's more just growth. And then it's not like judgment from their perspective. It's just like showing me some mistakes I made. And up until
Understanding how you co-create with someone else when you don't necessarily take the time to understand somebody else's perspective in the moment.
yeah,
You're maybe accidentally co-creating things you don't want because you're just not in a space of having that connective consciousness and understanding how they experience you, kind of thing. Like you're in your own experience, and that's the thing that I think we have as humans. Like we're very stuck in our own perspective, and
yeah,
you got to reach out a little bit to understand somebody else's perspective in order to co-create
yeah, yeah,
more intentionally.
yeah. And like it's like our ego, because like I generally had a good relationship with my father. I loved him. He's passed now. He passed away 2 years ago. So
Well, he's hanging out with my dad on the other side of the veil, and maybe they're having a good laugh about the towel.
yeah.
It's my immediate thought is Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but like always know where your towel is the thing that they say in Hitchhiker's Guide. Like, and it's sort
Oh,
of
no
like,
way.
I don't know if you're familiar with that book
Well,
series.
well, there's
So,
actually a funny story about that, just quickly,
yeah.
because I decided when I was in Lima, I've just come back from Peru, and I was living in Lima in Peru, the
Oh,
big
wow.
city. Just 2 months ago, I spent 3 years in Peru.
Oh,
I was in
amazing.
Yeah, I was in Lima for the last month in Peru, just 2 months ago, and I started making this video series to help starseeds, and I was going to call it a Starseeds Guide to the Galaxy, and then I decided to
There you
call it a
go.
Starseeds Guide to the Universe, and then when I moved into the hostel I stayed in Lima for the last month, in my room there was just like 5 books on the shelf in the room, and like two of them were in English because I was a Spanish speaking country, and one of them was the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
I love it.
So
Maybe they were trying to like, nudge you a little bit. Like,
yeah, so maybe I do need to read that to get the joke.
yeah, it's kind of the idea of it is if you always know where your towel is, that's somebody who's like got it together and knows what's going on, sort of thing. And so maybe the towel on his head is like
Oh,
thinking of
interesting.
your consciousness. Always know where your true put togetherness is. It's in your consciousness. It's in, I don't know. Yeah, definitely do check
I
it
don't
out.
know.
There might be something in there for you.
I think we're starting to uncover the joke here. It's very
Yeah.
interesting. Like, well, when you ask a question, when you come up with a question, the universe always answers it. I'm getting this all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I'll come up with a question and I'll just forget about it, and then I'll see the answer on TV or something, or like in a book or just in a sign in the street, and it's kind of like, I've just raised this question about were they sharing a joke with me, and now you've just
Yeah.
answered it for me. You're like the universe saying, yes,
It's
this
the
is the
it's
answer.
the cooperative components kind of thing, right? Like Abraham Hicks talks about being the cooperative component for the universe, and you never know when you're the one who is the cooperative component for somebody else.
Yeah, well, thank you for being the
I'm
cooperative
happy to help.
component. I can't even say the word, but thank you for
It's all
doing
right, yeah.
it.
No, but do
So,
check it out. There might be some more little, you never know what kind of synchronicities or tidbits might be in the book for you. I know that
yeah,
it's
maybe I
kind
have
of
to start
funny. Like
reading again.
Hitchhiker's Guide has been coming up for me quite a lot lately, actually. And the number
Oh,
42,
interesting.
which is the answer to life, the universe, and everything
Yeah.
in the Hitchhiker's Guide, is 42. I don't know why, but it just is. But yeah, I don't know. That's kind of fun. I do love that they have a sense of humor.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to get it now. I was kind of like, this is ridiculous. This just seems like childhood humor, and I was reading it, so but maybe I'm gonna have to watch it anyway. It just seemed a
Yeah.
little bit
See if there's
ridiculous.
something more for you in there.
Yeah. So so
So
so
you're
yes,
in the room and
yeah. So I've been shown all this kind of like a life review. I start crying to seeing all because they show me in an instant. This is how it works in higher dimensions. They can show you like years worth of experiences in one instant. And
mm-hmm.
so I saw like all the suffering my father's caused. Suffered due to me in my lifetime. Before that, I thought it was all his fault. My dad's a bad guy. Because we used to argue. We had a good relationship generally, but we did argue quite a lot. As both
Right.
fathers and sons do. And it's like he's the bad guy, I'm the spiritual one. And they showed me very clearly, no, we don't see it like that. We
Right.
love you both equally. We love your father as much as we love you. We don't judge either of you.
Right.
We see that you had a soul mission here. We see you both equally. And I'm like, oh. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh.
It's, but again, from the human ego perspective, it's hard to sort of, release the judgments that you have, especially, within family
Yeah.
groups is definitely a big thing. So definitely it's a little bit of a synchronicity for me. I'm kind of, I've been writing a series of short stories about like, life reviews. It's from the perspective of Death, the Grim Reaper, and she's telling stories of her favorite soul collections. And essentially, there's kind of these horrific life stories that happen, or these like sort of, tragic or sad life stories that happen. But from the perspective of the non-physical, once you get to that point, once you cross over with death and you're in your transitional space, you recognize all of the unconditional love that's always there for you, and the beauty of everything that you lived, even though in the moment that you lived it seemed dark or seemed something that you might not have wanted to create or experience, but there was so much more value in it that you understood it that you didn't understand at the time.
Yeah, totally. And so that was the kind of experience. And anyway, after I'd gone through that, after I'd like had my life review and faced the music, it's like I somehow had to go through that before I was able to see the amazing part of the experience. So the next thing I knew, I faced that. I've cried a lot, like on the beach, like literally in the meditation. I was like crying, like, oh my God, I can't believe I was such an asshole. How can I not see this? Kind of like this. And like, me and my father resolved a lot of our stuff, before he passed. So it was all very
Oh,
beautiful, almost like
yeah.
the Star Wars and Darth Vader story.
Yeah.
Not like that. That's
Maybe
not
not to that
example,
degree, but
yeah,
like just
what
closure
I
on
mean.
a lot of things
Yeah,
that
yeah,
yeah.
resolving it. And
Mm-hmm.
the Darth Vader story is very symbolic, actually, of the human experience. But anyway, that's going off on a tangent without time for. So
Another time.
yeah. So thank you, Dad, for being here for me. And like
Mm-hmm.
this room I'm staying in at the minute while I'm back visiting my parents is actually used to be his office. So I think his spirit
Oh,
is very much here at the minute.
yeah,
And
for sure.
maybe both our fathers are watching this podcast right now.
Oh, I like to think so.
Yeah. So after I've gone through this ordeal, the next thing I know in the meditation, recalling the experience on the ship, I'm walking along the ship. I believe Tahinio, my Yahyel counterpart, is on my right, though I don't recall seeing him again from this point. I just kind of feel that he's guiding me along the ship. We're walking around the outside, the right side edge of the ship, along the right side edge of the ship. And I feel it was maybe a triangle ship. I'm not sure though. And I'm looking to the left, and on my left, I thought I just saw the light flicker then. That was very strange. It switched off. Anyway, I'm looking to the left.
Is there some?
I can hear like electricity arcing. This is going like something out of Stranger Things now.
I
Anyway,
love it.
So I'm looking to the left, and there's a coffee table area. This is how it is. It looked basically like a round coffee table area with like a kitchen area around it, with like kitchen counters, like kitchen work surfaces,
Mm-hmm.
with like cabinets above them, just like a kitchen with like a round coffee table area. I don't think the ETs drink coffee. Who knows? But this is what I saw. It was all very blue. Everything had a blue hue to it, from what I know. Perhaps it was blue lighting. I don't know. I don't know seeing lighting, but there was two or three bits, so like two beings stood to the side of the coffee table, two upright beings about 6 foot tall, normal height. I don't really remember them clearly. One of them might have been bluish, I'm not sure, I don't remember them clearly, but sat on the kitchen counter, fully upright like that, was a like 2.5, 3 foot tall ladybug being. We call them ladybirds in the UK, the little red insects with the
Yeah,
black
yeah.
spots. Everyone knows very well. There was like a 3 foot tall extraterrestrial ladybird bug being, not down in the normal ladybird position, crawling like this, but
Right, but
sat
set
up
up
like this on the edge of the kitchen counter, as I
like
call it.
Beetlejuice.
Yeah.
Like in that there, because in Beetlejuice there's a scene where there's like an upright beetle in sort of like a
Oh, is there?
humanoid position, even though it's a beetle.
Oh, I have to watch that. I watched it like 30 years ago or so now. I don't
Oh,
remember.
it's kind of it's a big that one's a big movie for me.
Yeah. Oh, I'm gonna have to watch Beetlejuice as well. So yeah. So there's this, ladybug beetle sat upright, 2.5 foot tall, 3 foot tall, with little legs dangling over the sides, and just sat there. I remember him very vividly. I think it was a him. It definitely feels like a him, a male. I remember that very vividly. And we walk on a bit further in the ship, and there's like three beings lined up, kind of like we're doing like a military parade or something. I'm being
Okay,
paraded on the ship, and they're all there, stood there, waiting to meet me as I walk past them and greet
sure.
me. And like, there's the being that I call the Mayan being. There's this story that the Mayans like all disappeared and they maybe ascended into higher consciousness, and now a lot of them are extraterrestrials. I'm sure there's some something to this from what I saw. And like, so there's this being that looks very much like a South American being with a wide head. A lot of the South Americans, kind of wider heads.
Yeah,
And they also had very pug ears, which I've never really noticed in the South American. You know what I mean by sticky out pug ears?
yeah.
Really big sticky out pug ears. He was perhaps 5 foot tall or something like this, maybe a little bit shorter than me, and like the South Americans are. And he had this helmet on. He had a glass helmet. So none of the other beings, I remember, had helmets on, but he had like an
Interesting.
oxygen helmet, like a space helmet, which was made of glass, and it had like a seam around it, like a seam around it, and it was like two hemispheres that were bolted together with bolts through the seam, like the flange, I think is the proper engineering term
Okay.
for connection,
Hmm.
like a seam around it with rivets or bolts going through it, like with these two
Almost
glass
maybe kind of like what
hemispheres.
you imagine from Atlantis type imagery from older films that
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
like the underwater sort of look of that helmet that they have.
Yeah, yeah, kind of like this, but it was there was no metal. It was pure glass or
Right.
pure like some material, pure clear all the way around. I remember thinking every time I think of it how strange it was because everything else of the experience seemed so advanced, almost like I got teleported onto the ship, off the ship, like everything seems so advanced. Yet they had this really kind of rudimentary technology. Like, why would they use bolts or rivets? It seemed very,
Right.
very strange to me. Like, I still don't understand that. Maybe another joke, who knows? Maybe something
I
going
was gonna
on.
say, yeah, maybe a little something sort of like, yeah, this is kind of we view your technology as humans a little bit like this. It's a little bit, primitive and maybe not
Yeah.
necessary.
Yeah, or maybe it was so I could recall it easier because it was a bit more what I was used to. Because like I say, I'm struggling to remember some of the beings
Have
on the
a
ship.
sort of a trigger image kind of
Yeah,
thing.
something that
Yeah,
would
sure.
relate to my waking conscious that I was more familiar with. It'd be easier for me, like I used to work
Yes.
as an engineer, so like flanges and rivets and bolts,
Okay.
so
So something that connects in a way to like
yeah,
keep you grounded in the
yeah,
experience. Yeah.
I'd be able to recall. And I think I walked past two other beings. There was two other beings, but I don't remember them. I think one again was a blue being, but I don't remember clearly. At the back of the ship, there was lots of everything had a blue lighting, and at the back of the ship behind them, perhaps like 15 feet away, something like that, 20 feet away, about 20 feet away, I think. Like there was like all aquariums, like with fish in, and like
Okay.
vivariums, like, aquariums without water in that
Yeah,
have like,
right.
and I think there was like a big giant praying mantis in one, but only about this big. And I got the feeling that like Tahini had been all the way around the universe saying, do you want to meet a human? Do you want to go to Earth and meet a human? And picking up like not just like traditional ETs, but more like kind of, what we might call second density or lower,
Right.
more like animalistic like beings like insects and fish. And I seem to remember there's a tall aquarium with like a big fish in it or something on the left. And this is basically all I remember.
Interesting. So again, sorry, I want to be mindful of your time here. I know you said you had about 2 hours. But it's almost kind of like a dream state situation too, where you see certain imagery that doesn't really make sense necessarily to your logical mind, but when you start to try to think about symbolically or energetically what it might represent to you, it can maybe start to make a little bit more sense. Like, because when you're talking about this whole experience, I'm thinking about like dream situations that I've had that I'm like, you know, talking about like having like a trigger, like something in there that gets you to remember the imagery more because you connect it to your physical experience, your physical
Mhm.
life, but it helps you to remember the rest of the imagery that doesn't necessarily make sense to your logical mind. Right. So it's kind of having like a grounding mechanism, sort of, if you will, in the experience to help you to bring that information into your waking conscious state here, kind of thing. That's very
Yeah,
interesting.
totally. And of course, just like, to remind your listeners, although this sounds like a dream or just like a hallucination or something in a meditation, we've got to remember that this was all memories, from what I understand, of things that had a lot of physical corroboration, like the missing time and or the move. I suddenly moved location in the forest, the fighter
Mm-hmm.
jets flying around me, flying back into the city and recording the video on Facebook live stream, very emotional, sharing it after it happened. Then the ship's actually showing up and flashing us,
In the
on the
live
Facebook
stream that
live
you had.
stream.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, and
that
I
going
think,
on.
again, it's sort of because if you do look at the fact that we are all consciousness, right? Like everything technically that we're experiencing in this physical reality is a dream state, every bit as much as our actual what we consider to be a dream state. And so it's the same thing, right? That you have those corroborating situations happening in this physical reality to corroborate the realness of that in the same way, right? Like here's these triggers, you've lost time so that you know that this is real. It's all,
Yeah,
it's all consciousness. It's kind of, it helps it all tie together for you, kind of thing. So, to that's sort of a space that I've been in lately in my exploration of consciousness. Just the idea of like, well, what is real? What's real is what you define to be real. Everything is real. Everything you can think of is real. It exists somewhere. Just because you don't experience it in this physical realm doesn't mean that it's not real. It's just that you don't vibrate with it in the same way that you do with, like, this table, this computer, this microphone. It's all consciousness. It's all real in the sense of it's all exists somewhere. It's just that we as humans don't quite yet understand that concept of the multiverse. We're not fully plugged in, I guess you would say, in the sense that, like how you said you were seeing the screens of like what potential realities you could fall into in the day, depending on the, choose your own adventure choices that you make, right? If you choose this, turn to this page kind of thing, and this is what you're going to end up as. It's, that's part of the exciting thing, I think, with it, with the evolution of human consciousness and where we are. So I get it a little bit to some extent, the idea of why Earth is the big show and where it's at, because you're seeing um, the evolution and the upgrade of starting to recognize how much say we really have in creating our own reality, and seeing people waking up and seeing that and having a more intentional experience as a human, right? As, like you say, feeling your soul, being your soul on earth, right? And that's kind of the goal, is to be your true self, your true soul, while you're in this fractalized human vessel, and to experience that in this earth plane kind of thing, in this dream space, right? To have more control over this dream space, if you will. Sorry, I know I probably went off on a little tangent myself there.
no, no, very true, very true.
Well, I do. Again, I thank you so much for being here. I really do enjoy this conversation and your story. I know that you have, limited time. I would definitely love to have you back again to have another conversation of more of what you do. I'd certainly share your links with everyone so they can check out your channel and see more of your story, and see you channeling the Yahyel. And I just, before we would sort of wrap up here, do you have anything that you might want to share with the audience, or any sort of messages that you might want to give? I know that, you have a lot of them that come through, but do you have anything you might want to share?
Um, No, I don't think so. I think I probably shared enough for today. Like 2 hours, 10 minutes of nonstop talking. I think.
It's our it goes fast for you know when it is your highest joy, it's like time just stops existing for you.
Yeah, just like check out my website. I offer services, channeling services, and coaching and learn to channel courses. So I think Haley will probably share the link to this somewhere
Yeah,
so you
I'll
can.
have all the links in the description of the podcast and in the YouTube video and all that so people can find your information, find where you're at and explore your story more and explore the things that you have to offer more. So I do thank you so much for coming on and sharing the story though, even though, you don't know me except through the internet. So I appreciate you being willing to come and join me on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you very much, Haley. It's been a really amazing interview. You're an excellent interviewer. I've really enjoyed it. It's definitely
Thank
flowed
you.
very well. You've given me an opportunity to share some very important things. It seems there's been a lot of synchronicity like around this. I felt very excited to do it, and I understand now why, because I feel we vibed very well together.
I think so.
And you maybe answered my question about why Tahini was wearing the towel over his head. So I'm gonna have to
See,
Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
there you go. I'm here to help.
And yeah, so it feels very synchronous. And yeah, I know you're fairly new to podcasting, and I got another podcast. And I'm doing an interview for, they call us channelers, which is a super. He's got 100,000 subscribers, so I'm going to be on a bigger podcast later in the
Oh,
week.
very cool.
Well, I actually thought like because like I noticed you're just starting, and I thought, well, it feels, I just go on my resonance. I don't care about how many subscribers anyone's got. I've been on Vice and mainstream TV, and
I was gonna say, yeah, I know. That's actually the first thing that I saw of yours was the Vice video.
oh, awesome, yeah. I just follow my excitement because that's what I got to do, because that's what I'm taught by my gut, by the Yahyel and by Bachar and the ETs in channeling. And so I thought maybe if I come on this new podcast that's just getting started, maybe I'll get some synchronicity or some good karma or something. I'll get invited on a big podcast, and I did just a few days later.
I love it.
On this they call us channelers, the More Show, and he's got over 100,000 subscribers. So
Get out to a bigger audience, and certainly, that's I'm just trusting the universe to guide me into where I can really be full time doing my passion and my this podcasting and my writing and the things that I'm excited about and exploring these concepts and exploring consciousness. So, we'll see the synchronicity. I'll watch for my own synchronicities too. I'm sure that they're all available in the here and now. You just have to be open to receiving them, right?
yeah, definitely, and yeah, it's just really, really, keep going. You're doing a really good job. You've done a wonderful job in this podcast. You're as good as any interviewer I've
Thank you.
I've done, definitely, better than a lot of bigger and well-known ones, without a doubt. This is one of the best podcasts I've been on. I really enjoyed it, and I
Oh,
think
thank you.
yeah, you're definitely a natural at it. I suggest you keep going. If you just keep going and
That's where I'm at. I'm just gonna keep doing it, and then something has to click for me somewhere. I don't know where it is, but that's the ego self doesn't know, so I'll just have to just let the ego keep doing its little games that it likes to play, and just keep doing my highest joy and trust that it's gonna fall together in the right way.
yeah, post regularly if you can, to keep the YouTube algorithm and your followers knowing when
I know, right? That's the difficult part, right? You got to keep up that content.
I'm still no good at it now. Like I don't post regularly. I get periods where I need breaks and I have to take breaks, so I can't do the posting regularly thing. And my
Yeah.
YouTube subscribers, I don't get these huge views anymore. But I'm not going to burn myself out for the sake of a few YouTube views. So,
No, and it's again, you have to trust that your reality supports you regardless of what the mainstream sort of storyline is, in terms of what you have to be doing to get followers and things like that. So
yeah,
just
and I was going to say get on TikTok, because it's loads easier to get followers on TikTok at the minute.
yeah,
I get loads of views on TikTok. It's growing a lot faster, so get some clips on TikTok.
yeah, follow where the platforms go for sure. Well, thank you so much again for joining me. I really enjoyed the conversation. I do hope I could have you back again sometime.
Yeah, I'd love to come back on sometime. It feels like we've only just started talking. It's been 2 hours and 18 minutes. And
Yeah.
I've only just touched on the start. So yeah, I'd love to come back on and talk about, maybe we'll be talking about this September's contact experience next
I
year.
love it. That would be great for sure. Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Hayley, and thank you to all your listeners for listening in. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I'll see you all in another now.
That's right.
Thank you, Hayley. Bye-bye.
Yeah, sorry. Hi again, friends. That was my conversation with Jonathan Trinity Martin, again, who channels the Yahyel civilization or collective consciousness referred to as the Yahyel. If you'd like more information about Jonathan, you can find the links in the description that I have to his YouTube channel, and you can get more information and see more of his channeling and see him in the channeling state. If you'd like to support more episodes of this podcast and meet more fascinating and wonderful humans, then do go over to my Patreon, patreon.com/AbernathyFranklin. That is also the umbrella Patreon for my fictional podcast, The Adventures of Abernathy Franklin, which you can find wherever you're listening to this podcast. I do thank you all so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this conversation that I had with Jonathan. And wherever you are out there, friends, I hope you're doing well.